Hello everyone. Welcome to Dead Time Stories. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story. The rain had been falling for hours, steady and relentless, by the time Clara turned onto Blackthorn Road. Her small sedan shuddered slightly as the tires splashed through another deep puddle, the headlights catching the silver spray of water before it vanished into darkness again. The wipers squeaked rhythmically across the windshield, never quite fast enough to keep up with the downpour. She leaned forward, peering through the streaked glass. The road seemed to stretch endlessly into blackness, the trees on either side crowding so close that they formed a tunnel of wet branches. Their twisted shapes bent under the weight of the storm, and when the wind rose, they rattled and shook as if whispering secrets back and forth. Her phone, sitting in the cup holder, had long since lost signal. The GPS had frozen on a half-rendered map before blinking out altogether, leaving her with nothing but her memory of her father's directions. Follow Blackthorn until you see the gate. It's hard to spot, but you'll know it when you do. The words repeated in her head as she glanced nervously at each passing break in the tree line. The storm made everything look the same, shadows, thickets, and mud. Then she almost missed it. On her left, hidden between overgrown hedges, a rusted gate sagged from one hinge. Its chains dangled uselessly, and the metal looked as though it might crumble into flakes if touched. Behind it stretched a gravel driveway, barely visible through the sheets of rain, and far at the end of it loomed a shape, tall, angular, unmistakably a house. Clara slowed. Her fingers tightened on the wheel. The house had belonged to her grandmother, though Clara could only summon the faintest memories of visiting as a child. A stern old woman, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued, her grandmother had lived here alone for nearly 4 decades. When she died, the house passed to Clara. Her parents hadn't wanted it. No one else in the family had wanted it. And so here she was, tasked with sorting through what was left. She turned into the driveway, gravel crunching beneath her tires. The car jolted over potholes filled with muddy water. The headlights swept across the front of the house, illuminating its weathered boards and narrow windows. 3 stories tall, its peaked roof was crowned with a lightning rod, and one shutter swung in the wind with a hollow thunk, thunk, thunk. Clara pulled to a stop and killed the engine. The sudden silence was unnerving, the hum of the car gone, leaving only the drumming rain and the faint ticking of the cooling engine. She sat for a moment, keys in her hand, staring at the front door. The porch sagged with age. The windows reflected nothing, as though the house itself rejected light. Something about it felt aware. Clara shook herself, exhaling sharply. "Don't be ridiculous," she muttered. "It's just the house." She opened the door. The storm immediately swallowed her in cold rain, plastering her hair to her forehead. She grabbed her bag from the passenger seat, slung it over her shoulder, and stepped out onto the gravel. As she walked toward the porch, the thought pressed against her mind like an unwelcome guest. The house has been holding its breath, and now, it's exhaling. The porch groaned under Clara's weight as she climbed the steps, each footfall sending a dull vibration through the sodden wood. Up close, the front door looked worse than she remembered, paint peeled in long, curling strips, and the brass handle had dulled into a greenish patina. She fished the ring of keys from her pocket and held it under the beam of her flashlight, squinting at the tags. The largest key was old-fashioned, heavy, with teeth worn smooth from decades of use. It slid into the lock but resisted, grinding stubbornly as though reluctant to surrender. Clara jiggled it, pressed harder, and finally felt the tumblers shift. With a reluctant clack, the lock gave way. A thin draft slipped out, cold and stale. It carried the scent of mildew and something older, something earthy, the smell of things left too long in the dark. Clara wrinkled her nose but pushed the door open, the hinges screaming as though in protest. The beam of her flashlight cut into the hallway, revealing walls lined with faded wallpaper patterned in yellow roses. Dust floated in the air, stirred by the intrusion, shimmering faintly in the light. A grand staircase rose just inside the entry, its banister thick with grime, its steps shrouded in shadow. Clara stood on the threshold, her pulse quickening. She remembered flashes, standing here as a child, clutching her mother's hand, staring up at that same staircase. It had seemed impossibly tall back then, a ladder into some forbidden space. She couldn't recall what was upstairs, only that her grandmother had never allowed her to wander freely. "You'll stay in the parlor," the old woman had snapped. "The rest of the house isn't for children." The memory sent a faint shiver down Clara's arms. She stepped inside. The floorboards groaned beneath her, flexing slightly with her weight. The door swung shut behind her with a deep, final thud, and though she knew it was only the wind, the sound felt deliberate, as though the house had sealed her inside. Clara set her bag on a chair by the entryway. The fabric tore slightly, spilling a corner of her sweater through a seam. She muttered a curse under her breath and adjusted it, then lifted her flashlight again. The beam swept over crooked frames hanging on the wall. Faded photographs of unfamiliar faces stared back at her, their eyes obscured by grime, their expressions warped by time. An old coat rack leaned against the corner, one yellowed scarf still hanging limp from its hook. At the far end of the hall stood a door. Taller than the others, narrower too, its frame slanted as if the house itself had grown uneven around it. Something about it drew her attention, though she quickly looked away. Above her, the storm battered the roof and rattled the windows. And then, just faintly, she heard it. A sound inside the house. Not the storm. Not the creak of wood settling. Something else. It was soft, deliberate. A dragging noise, as though weight were being shifted across the floor above her. Clara froze. Her heart lurched against her ribs. She raised the flashlight toward the staircase. The shadows pooled thick at the landing, stubborn and deep. The beam didn't reach far enough to see what lay beyond. Her mouth went dry. "It's just a house," she told herself. Old, drafty, full of noises. But as she stood there, straining to listen, the floor above her creaked again. This time, it sounded unmistakably like a footstep. Clara's breath caught in her throat. For a long moment she stood rooted to the spot, the beam of her flashlight trembling where it pointed at the staircase. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to step back outside into the storm, slam the door shut and drive away without looking back. But then another thought followed close behind. This house is mine now. If I can't stand inside it for more than 5 minutes, what chance do I have of lasting the week it'll take to sort through everything? She swallowed and forced her voice into the silence, though it came out thin, quivering. "Hello?" Her words fell flat against the wallpapered walls. No answer. Only the steady drum of rain on the roof, the wind pressing faintly at the windows. She gripped the flashlight tighter. "If someone's in here, I should warn you. I'll call the police." Still nothing. The silence afterwards seemed heavier, as if the house itself had leaned in to listen. Clara exhaled shakily. She bent, opened her bag, and pulled out her phone. No signal. The bars remained stubbornly empty. She clicked the screen off and tucked it back into her pocket. "All right, Clara," she whispered. "Just old wood. Just your nerves. Don't let a little creak send you running." Even as she said it, her eyes flicked again to the staircase. The banister gleamed faintly in her flashlight, its carved spindles casting sharp shadows across the steps. Each riser seemed to rise too steeply, vanishing into a pool of darkness above. She took a tentative step forward. The floor moaned under her, and the sound of it seemed to echo up the stairwell, as though announcing her approach. Her grandmother's voice came back to her suddenly, unbidden, echoing in memory. "Upstairs is not for children." Clara bit her lip. "Well," she murmured aloud, "I'm not a child anymore." The words gave her a sliver of courage, enough to place one foot on the bottom stair. The wood groaned. She waited, holding her breath. The house waited with her. Another step. Then another. Her flashlight beam wavered across the landing, catching the edge of a hallway lined with doors. She had the strange impression that the shadows clung to them more stubbornly than to the rest of the house. like patches of ink that refused to fade. Halfway up, she paused. There it was again, that dragging sound. Closer now. Just ahead down the hall. She tightened her grip on the banister. "Who's there?" she called louder this time. For the briefest instant, she thought she heard something shift in reply, like fabric brushing against wood. Then silence. Clara forced herself up the remaining stairs, each step groaning as though the house resented her weight. At the top, she hesitated, lifting her flashlight to sweep across the hallway. The beam illuminated peeling wallpaper the color of faded cream, patterned with flowers long since dulled into shadows of themselves. The air up here was different, colder, damper, carrying a faint metallic tang that reminded her of rusted pipes. 3 doors lined the hall. 2 on the left, 1 at the far end. Each was closed. Each was old, their paint cracked and chipped, the brass knobs tarnished to a dull brown. Clara felt her pulse quicken. The dragging sound she'd heard, she was sure it had come from here. Her mouth was dry. She licked her lips and whispered, almost involuntarily, "Grandma?" The word surprised her. It hung in the air, fragile, ridiculous. Her grandmother was gone. She knew that. And yet, standing here, it felt like calling out to the house itself, as though some trace of the woman lingered. The silence that followed was heavy, pressing against her ears until she felt she might hear her own blood rushing. "Get it over with," she muttered. "One room at a time." She reached for the nearest knob. The metal was icy under her fingers, biting against her skin. She turned it slowly, half expecting it to resist, but it gave with a faint squeal. The door creaked open. Inside, her flashlight beam revealed a bedroom frozen in time. A 4-poster bed sat against the wall, its lace canopy sagging under years of dust. The sheets were yellowed, stiff, and a doll sat propped against the pillows, porcelain face cracked, eyes painted in a fixed stare that seemed to follow her. Clara's breath caught. The air here smelled faintly of lavender, faded but still clinging. A perfume her grandmother used to wear. She stepped inside, sweeping the light across the dresser, bottles of perfume, a silver brush still tangled with strands of white hair, a jewelry box with a broken clasp. Everything remained as though waiting for someone to return. The doll's head was tilted at an unnatural angle, its tiny mouth frozen in a painted half-smile. Clara felt an involuntary shiver crawl down her spine. She forced her eyes away. "Okay," she whispered, voice low and shaky. "That's one." She backed out, pulling the door closed behind her. The knob resisted for a moment, as though something on the other side pressed back. Her heart lurched before it gave way with a faint snap. She turned toward the second door. The shadows seemed to thicken there, clustering around the frame. Her flashlight flickered once, then steadied. Clara tightened her grip and stepped forward. Clara stood before the second door, her hand hovering over the knob. She told herself it would be just another forgotten room, another relic of her grandmother's life preserved in dust. Yet her body resisted, her skin prickling as though the air itself warned her to leave it shut. She drew in a steadying breath and forced a nervous laugh. "You're not scared of a door?" she whispered. Her voice sounded too small in the hallway. The knob was colder than the last, almost wet, as though it had been touched recently. She twisted, the latch groaning, and pushed the door open. Her flashlight beams swept inside, cutting through gloom. This room was smaller, narrower. The wallpaper here had peeled away in long strips, exposing wooden slats beneath. Boxes lined the walls, cardboard swollen and sagging from damp. In the center of the room stood a rocking chair, its paint flaked and faded to the color of bone. The chair moved. Just slightly. A faint sway forward then back. Enough to squeal against the warped floorboards. Clara's throat tightened. Her light quivered over it, catching dust motes stirred by the motion. She waited, her pulse hammering, expecting another sway, but it stopped, perfectly still, as though it had never moved at all. "Draft," she muttered, but her words rang hollow. She stepped closer, lifting the beam to the boxes. They were labeled in spidery handwriting, "Winter clothes." Letters. Toys. Her grandmother's life, packed and forgotten. She crouched near the top box, tugging at the lid. It crumbled at her touch, collapsing inward. Inside, bundled in brittle tissue paper, lay a collection of stuffed animals. A rabbit missing one ear, a bear with button eyes, a limp rag doll whose smile had faded into a crooked seam. Clara touched the bear's matted fur. Something about it felt wrong, too warm, as though it had been held recently. She dropped it back into the box and wiped her hands on her jeans. Behind her, the chair groaned again. She spun, flashlight jerking wildly. The chair rocked, slow and deliberate. Forward. Back. Forward. Clara's breath came sharp and quick. "Stop it," she whispered. "Just stop." The chair slowed, then stilled. She backed toward the hallway, one hand still clutched around the flashlight, the other groping for the knob. She found it, turned it, and yanked the door shut behind her. The hallway seemed darker now, as though the shadows had crept closer while she was inside. At the far end waited the third door. And for the first time since she'd arrived, Clara wasn't sure she wanted to open it at all. The third door loomed at the end of the hallway, taller than the others, its frame crooked as if the house had warped around it. Clara stood frozen, her flashlight beam fixed on its surface. The wood was darker, swollen with age, and faint streaks ran down its panels, as though something had once leaked from above and stained it permanently. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. She told herself she could turn back, retreat downstairs, unroll her sleeping bag in the parlor, and deal with the rest in the daylight. But the thought of leaving this particular door unopened gnawed at her. It felt as though the entire house had drawn her here, to this one place. Her grandmother's voice, sharp and distant, echoed in her head. "The rest of the house isn't for children." Clara swallowed. "I'm not a child," she whispered again, though the words lacked conviction. She stepped forward, each creak of the floorboards loud in the silence. When she reached the door, she lifted her hand and pressed her palm against it. The wood was warmer than the others, almost pulsing. She snatched her hand back, hard hammering. "Don't be ridiculous," she muttered, gripping the flashlight tighter. "It's just wood." Her hand closed around the knob. It turned easily, almost too easily, as though the door had been waiting for her touch. She pushed it open. The smell hit her first, damp, stale, with a faint undercurrent of rot. Her flashlight beam spilled across the room, revealing bare floorboards and cracked plaster walls. Unlike the other rooms, this one was empty. No furniture, no boxes, nothing but a single narrow window at the far wall, its glass so grimy it barely let the stormlight through. She stepped inside. The air here was heavy, pressing against her skin, thick with a silence that seemed alive. Her flashlight swept across the floor. There, faint scratches in the wood, a pattern of lines etched deep, as though something had been dragged in circles, over and over. Clara crouched, tracing one groove with her fingertip. It was deep, fresh compared to the rest of the house. Behind her, the door clicked. She jerked upright, spinning. The door had swung shut. She rushed to it, grabbing the knob, but it wouldn't turn. Stuck. Her pulse spiked. She shoved harder, the knob refusing to budge. "No, no, no!" And then, from behind her, came the sound. A scrape. Slow. Deliberate. Like something moving across the floor. Clara turned, flashlight beam quivering, cutting across the scratches in the wood. The sound came again, closer this time. But the room was empty. Her breath came fast and shallow, fogging in the cold. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Show yourself!" The silence that followed was worse than any reply. And then, soft as a whisper, so faint she thought she imagined it, she heard her name. Clara. Her name hung in the air, fragile and thin, as if it had been carried on the wind, yet there was no breeze. The room was sealed, the air heavy and unmoving. Clara pressed her back to the door, her fingers white-knuckled around the knob. "Who's there?" she repeated, louder this time, though her voice cracked. Silence. Her flashlight beam skittered across the walls, catching on cracks in the plaster, on warped floorboards, on that grimy little window. Nothing moved. Yet the sense of presence pressed closer, as though the empty air itself leaned toward her. She swallowed hard, throat dry. "It's just the storm," she muttered, trying to convince herself. "You're jumpy, that's all." But then came the scrape. Louder now, directly across the floor. A dragging sound, deliberate, circling her. Clara snapped the beam downward. The scratches in the wood seemed to ripple under the light, as though deepening before her eyes. Her pulse thundered in her ears. "Stop it!" she shouted, desperate, the sound of her own voice breaking the silence too harshly. And then, the rocking. Not the chair this time, but the floor itself, beneath her feet, giving a faint heave like the shift of a great chest inhaling. She staggered back against the door, palms flat against the panels. "No, no, no!" she whispered. She turned the knob again, rattling it furiously. Still stuck. Her eyes darted to the window. The glass was smeared opaque, but she could see the faint flash of lightning beyond. She rushed to it, dropped her flashlight on the sill, and pressed both hands against the frame. It groaned but didn't move. She slammed her shoulder into it once, twice, until the wood cracked, but still it held. And then, behind her, the whisper returned. Closer. "Clara!" She spun, breath ragged, flashlight beam cutting wildly across the floor. Nothing there. Just dust. Just scratches. The sound of her name came again, but this time, it was different. Not one voice. Many. A low chorus, dry and papery, like words spoken through mouths that hadn't opened in decades. "Clara! Clara!" The light flickered. The beam dimmed, sputtered before surging bright again. In that flicker, for half a heartbeat, she saw them. Shadows on the far wall, tall and thin, their shapes pressed flat against the plaster. And every one of them turned toward her. Clara froze, her lungs straining for air that suddenly felt too thick to breathe. The shadows clung to the far wall, elongated and warped, as though cast by figures that weren't really there. Her flashlight beam quivered over them, but they didn't fade. They leaned into the light instead, stretching closer. Her voice broke. "This isn't real. You're not real." The chorus answered her, whispering her name again, the sound rolling over itself like 100 dry leaves caught in the wind. "Clara! Clara! Clara!" The shadows shifted. Slowly, deliberately, they peeled away from the wall, their flat forms thickening into depth, shapes unfastening themselves from plaster and paint. They rose taller as they drew closer, limbs too long, heads bowed as if straining to listen. Clara stumbled backward, her shoulders slamming into the unyielding door. Her flashlight beams shook violently, slicing across their faces, if they could be called faces. Smooth expanses of darkness, no eyes, no mouths, only the impression of hollow features pressed beneath fabric. Her knees trembled. She screamed before she could stop herself. "Stay away!" For an instant, the chorus fell silent. The room listened. Then came the dragging again, not from one place this time, but from all around her. The sound of weight shifting across the wood in a circle, as if something invisible surrounded her, closing in. Clara snapped her head toward the window. Desperation surged through her chest. She grabbed the sill with both hands, drove her elbow into the glass. It cracked, splintering a jagged line across its center. She hit it again. A shard snapped free, slicing her forearm. She hissed in pain but slammed the glass a third time until it finally gave way, raining shards across the floor. Lightning flared outside, throwing the room into stark white for a heartbeat. In that flash she saw the shadows fully formed, no longer pressed to the walls but standing, circling her. She clawed at the broken frame, shoving the jagged wood aside. Her body half climbed through before something cold brushed her ankle. She screamed, kicking wildly, her shoes scraping wood. The whispering voices surged at once, louder, insistent, like a crowd pressing closer. "Clara, don't leave! Don't leave! Stay!" She shoved herself forward, glass tearing at her clothes, the storm's icy wind whipping her hair as she tumbled out onto the slick roof beyond. Rain hammered her face, shocking and cold. For a moment she lay there, chest heaving, the whispering muffled behind the broken window. Then, faintly, impossibly, she heard a voice she recognized. Her grandmother's. "Clara, come back inside." The rain lashed at Clara's face, cold needles stinging her skin. She pressed herself flat against the slick shingles, her palms searching desperately for grip. The roof slanted steeply downward, and below her the ground seemed impossibly far, a blur of mud and dark trees. The wind howled, rattling the gutters, tugging at her clothes. For a terrifying moment her shoe slipped, sending her body lurching sideways. She clawed at the shingles, nails scraping, until she found a ridge to cling to. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her heart battering her chest. Behind her, the broken window gaped like an open mouth. Darkness pressed at its edges, thicker than the storm itself. And then that voice came again, her grandmother's voice, soft, patient, with that same clipped tone she remembered from childhood. "Clara, you'll hurt yourself. Come back inside. It isn't safe out there." Clara's stomach twisted. The words were familiar, almost comforting. But her grandmother had been dead for months. She knew that. She knew. Her teeth chattered as she shouted into the wind. "You're not her! You can't be her!" The voice didn't waver. It came again, clearer this time, as though the storm itself carried it. "I told you not to go upstairs, child. You never listen." Clara's hands slipped slightly on the shingles, her skin raw from the scrape of grit. Her body trembled with exhaustion and fear. She risked a glance toward the window, and nearly screamed. A figure stood inside the room, just beyond the jagged glass. Tall, thin, its face hidden in the shadows. Its outline pulsed faintly with each flash of lightning, as though stitched together from the dark itself. And yet, the tilt of its head, the slight stoop of its shoulders, it was her. Her grandmother's shape, unmistakable, watching her from inside the house. Clara shook her head violently, rainwater streaming into her eyes. "No, no, you're gone. You're gone!" The figure leaned closer, pressing one long-fingered hand against the broken frame. The chorus of whispers surged again, rising above the storm, overlapping until it was impossible to tell one voice from another. "Come back! Come back! Come back!" Clara's chest seized with panic. She had two choices: crawl along the slick roof toward the gutter, risking a fall, or turn back toward that broken window and the thing that wore her grandmother's shape. Neither felt survivable. Clara's fingers burned from gripping the slick shingles, her knuckles white against the black surface. Rainwater streamed down her arms, seeping into her sleeves, chilling her to the bone. The wind rose in a sudden gust, shrieking through the trees, and she flattened herself lower, her cheek pressed to the rough grit of the roof. Below, the ground blurred in darkness. If she slipped, she wouldn't survive the fall. She knew it in her gut. The mud and rocks at the base of the house would snap her bones like twigs. Behind her, the broken window yawned wide, a jagged wound in the house's skin. Lightning flashed, and for an instant she saw the figure still standing there, framed in splintered glass. Her grandmother's shape, her grandmother's stooped shoulders, but stretched taller, limbs too long, face still hidden. Her pulse pounded in her ears. "Go," she whispered to herself. "Go for the gutter. Don't look back." She shifted her weight, inching sideways across the roof. Her shoes slipped twice, scraping dangerously near the edge, but she forced herself forward, her muscles aching with the strain. The wind howled again. This time, it carried words, faint but distinct, curling through the storm like smoke. "Clara, if you fall, no one will find you. No one will come. You'll die out here alone." Clara gritted her teeth, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "Shut up!" she screamed, the sound torn away by the storm. "You're not real!" The roof shuddered beneath her, a low groan echoing through the beams. For a terrifying moment she thought the entire structure might collapse, sending her tumbling into the blackness below. She clawed desperately toward the gutter, her hand brushing cold metal. Relief surged in her chest. She gripped it hard, knuckles scraping against rust. And then, icy fingers closed around her ankle. Clara shrieked, twisting violently, kicking at the empty air. Her flashlight, still clutched in her other hand, jerked wildly. Its beams swept across the roof, catching a glimpse of something emerging from the broken window. A hand, long, too thin, the skin the color of ash, groped blindly outward, followed by the slope of a shadowy arm. The thing dragged itself onto the roof with agonizing slowness, pulling its elongated body through the jagged glass as though bones meant nothing to it. Clara's chest heaved. She kicked again, freeing her leg, and scrambled along the gutter, her shoes slipping, her palms scraping raw. The whispers rose into a furious chorus, louder than the storm. "Don't run! Don't run! Don't run!" Clara choked back a sob, clinging to the gutter, the edge of the house beneath her hands. One wrong move, and she would fall. But one glance back, and she knew she'd see that thing crawling closer across the roof. Clara's lungs burned, each breath ragged and shallow as she clung to the gutter. Rust bit into her palms, the metal slick with rain. She dared a glance down. The yard below was nothing but shadows and mud, broken branches scattered like spears. If she fell, she wouldn't walk away. Behind her, the roof groaned. A scraping sound rose above the storm, nails or claws dragging against shingles. She didn't look back. She couldn't. "Think," she whispered, her teeth chattering. "Think." Her eyes darted to the corner of the house where the gutter bent downward into a drain pipe. Thin. Rusted. But maybe strong enough. It was her only chance. She edged sideways, her body pressed flat to the roof, rainwater rushing beneath her like a stream. The whispers followed her, riding the wind, curling around her ears in voices that rose and fell together. "Don't climb down. You'll slip. You'll die. Come back. Come inside." Her muscles screamed with exhaustion, but she forced herself onward until her hands closed around the drain pipe. It wobbled under her weight, groaning against the wall. Clara bit her lip hard enough to taste blood. "Please hold." She swung one leg over the edge, then the other, dangling in the air. Her shoes slipped against the wet siding as she braced herself, hugging the pipe with all her strength. It rattled, flakes of rust crumbling beneath her fingers. Above her, the roof shuddered again. The scraping grew louder, closer. Clara glanced up just as lightning ripped across the sky. For an instant the roof lit up in blinding white. The figure was there, crawling on all fours, its limbs stretched wrong, elbows jutting at impossible angles. Its head turned toward her, though its face remained an eyeless blur. Clara's heart lurched violently. She dropped lower, the pipe shrieking as bolts strained in their sockets. "Come back!" the chorus urged, overlapping, insistent. "Come back, Clara! The house is waiting!" Clara rolled onto her side, clutching her ribs. A sharp pain bloomed beneath her skin, each breath jagged. She didn't think anything was broken, but the impact had left her dizzy, her ears ringing with the echo of the fall. The mud sucked at her palms as she pushed herself up. Her jeans were soaked, her jacket torn, streaked with dirt and blood from shallow cuts. She staggered to her feet, swaying. Above, the figure still lingered on the roof's edge, motionless. Lightning flickered again, illuminating its outline. For a heartbeat she thought she saw its head cocked to one side, as though amused. Then darkness swallowed it once more. Clara stumbled forward into the yard. The grass here grew high, wet blades slapping against her legs as she pushed through. Branches littered the ground from the storm, sharp splinters snapping beneath her shoes. Her only thought was distance. Distance from the house, from the whispers, from the shadow in the window. If she could reach the tree line, maybe she could follow the road back to her car. Maybe. The wind roared through the oaks that bordered the property, bending them until they groaned like old timbers. And beneath the storm's fury, she heard something else. The whispers hadn't stayed behind. They threaded through the branches, low and steady, curling around her in 1,000 voices at once. "Clara, don't run!" Her breath caught. She turned, scanning the shadows. The house loomed behind her, black against the storm, its windows like watching eyes. She could swear the front door had swung open, yawning wide as if to invite her back. "Stay away," she rasped, stumbling faster. "I'm not going back." Her foot caught on a root. She pitched forward, slamming onto her knees. Mud spattered her hands, thick and cold. She scrambled up again, teeth gritted, forcing her body to move despite the ache in her side. The whispers swelled, rising to a hiss. "You can't leave. You're ours. Always ours." She clenched her jaw and slid further down, the metal scraping her arms, tearing her sleeves. Below, the ground loomed nearer, though still treacherous. Just a few more feet. And then, a sound that froze her blood. The pipe ripped free from the wall with a metallic scream. Clara plummeted. She struck the ground hard, mud exploding around her. Pain shot up her side, her breath knocked out in a sharp, wheezing gasp. For a moment she lay stunned, the rain pounding into her face. Then, slowly, she turned her head. Up above, the broken window gaped. The roofline quivered against the storm. And silhouetted against the lightning, the figure stood on the edge, watching her. The ground seemed to shift beneath her feet, slicker than it should be, pulling her down with each step. She pushed harder, arms pumping, her flashlight beam jerking wildly through the rain. And then, something cold brushed her ankle. She screamed, kicking free, twisting to see what had caught her. Nothing but mud clinging thick around her shoe. But the impression of fingers remained on her skin, phantom and icy. She stumbled backward, chest heaving. Her eyes lifted to the trees ahead. They loomed impossibly tall, their trunks packed tight, a wall of shadows swaying with the storm. For the first time, Clara realized the forest didn't look like it had when she arrived. The trees had shifted. The driveway should have been there. The break in the hedge. The faint glint of her car's headlights. Instead, there was nothing but endless black trunks stretching on forever. Clara's stomach dropped. She spun in a slow circle, rain plastering her hair to her face, blinking against the sting of water. There should have been a break in the tree line, some glimpse of gravel, the rusted gate, the narrow road. Instead, trees loomed in every direction, black and endless, trunks pressed tight together like prison bars. Her chest rose and fell in ragged gasps. No, 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 no. This isn't right. The storm battered the branches overhead, sending torrents of water crashing down. Lightning flashed, searing the world white for an instant. In that flash, she thought she saw shapes moving between the trees, tall, thin shadows, slipping silently from trunk to trunk. She blinked, and they were gone. Clara stumbled backward, nearly losing her footing in the sucking mud. Her flashlight beam quivered across the hedge line, but every path she thought she saw vanished when she tried to focus. "You're imagining it," she whispered, her voice shaky. "You're lost, that's all. The storm's making everything look different." But the whispers disagreed. They slithered between the branches, circling her head like gnats, pressing close enough she could almost feel breath against her ear. "Not lost. Not lost. Home. You are home." Clara clamped her hands over her ears. "Shut up!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "You're not real!" The trees groaned, bending under the weight of the storm. One branch snapped overhead and came crashing down, splintering into the mud just feet from where she stood. She flinched, dropping to her knees, the shock of it rattling through her bones. Above the wind, another sound reached her, faint, rhythmic. A creak. Like wood shifting. Her head jerked toward the house. The front door still gaped wide. And slowly, impossibly, the porch swing began to move. Forward. Back. Forward. Clara's chest constricted. She took one step toward the trees, then another. The mud clung tighter, dragging at her ankles as if trying to hold her still. And then she saw it, a flicker of light deep in the woods. A lantern's glow, faint but steady, bobbing as though carried by someone walking. Her heart leapt. Someone else was here. Someone who could help. She staggered forward, raising her hand. "Hey! Over here! Please!" The light swayed once, paused, then began moving toward her. Relief flooded her chest, so sharp it almost hurt. She pushed herself harder, ignoring the sting in her ribs, the ache in her legs. Mud splashed up her shins as she trudged toward that golden glow. But as it drew closer, she noticed something that made her slow. The light didn't illuminate anything around it. The trees, the ground, all stayed black, untouched by its glow. And beneath the creak of the storm, she heard another sound. Footsteps. Heavy. Wet. Keeping pace with hers. Clara slowed her pace, her breath hitching. The lantern's glow swayed gently between the trees, closer now, but the woods around it remained drenched in shadow, as if the light had no power beyond its own edges. Her voice cracked as she called out again. "Hello? Please, I need help." The light paused. A beat of silence stretched, heavy and expectant. Then it resumed its bobbing path, this time angling directly toward her. Relief and dread tangled inside her chest. She pressed forward, her flashlight beam shaking. "Thank God," she whispered, though the words felt brittle. The footsteps grew louder, squelching through mud. Slow, deliberate, too heavy for the delicate glow of that lantern. When at last the figure emerged between the trees, Clara's stomach turned to ice. It was tall, taller than any person had a right to be. Its shoulders brushed the low branches as it stooped slightly, moving with a jerking, uneven gait. The lantern swung from one impossibly long arm, its iron handle dangling from fingers that seemed more like twigs than flesh. The light illuminated only part of it, a chest draped in tatters of what might once have been a coat, soaked dark with rain, a glimpse of a throat too pale, stretched taut, and beneath the brim of a wide, dripping hat, the faint suggestion of a face. Clara froze, every muscle locking. Her mind screamed to turn and run, but her body betrayed her, feet rooted in the sucking mud. The figure stopped a few yards away. The lantern swayed between them, its glow reflected faintly in the black pools of water at their feet. The whispers hushed. For the first time since she'd fled the house, the chorus fell silent. The only sound was the storm and Clara's pounding heart. Then the figure spoke. Its voice was low, distorted, dragging like gravel across stone. "You shouldn't be here, Clara!" Her breath caught in her throat. "Who?" She swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The lantern swayed again. A drip of rain ran down the brim of its hat, vanishing into the shadows where its face should have been. "Don't you remember?" it asked. Lightning split the sky, bleaching the forest white. In that flash she saw its face clearly, pale, sagging skin, eyes black and bottomless, mouth stretched too wide in something like a smile. When the dark returned, her scream tore loose before she could stop it. Clara bolted. Her legs pumped through the sucking mud, shoes slipping, lungs burning. Branches slapped her face and snagged her jacket, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. The memory of that face, pale, sagging, smiling too wide, seared itself behind her eyes. The lantern's glow didn't fade behind her. It swayed in pursuit, steady as a heartbeat, bobbing through the trees. And with it came the voice, low and resonant, carrying easily over the storm. "Clara, you always come back. Always." Her chest seized with panic. She shoved through a tangle of brush, thorns tearing her sleeves, and stumbled into a small clearing. The rain pooled there, a slick mirror of mud and water, her reflection breaking apart under her frantic steps. She risked a glance back. The figure was there, stepping into the clearing as if the storm bent around it. The lantern glowed in its hand, and though it didn't hurry, its long strides devoured the distance. Clara's pulse hammered. She turned and plunged into the trees again, desperate. The forest resisted. Branches leaned lower, clawing at her hair. Roots rose from the ground like grasping fingers, tripping her, sending her crashing to her knees. She scrambled up, hands raw and bleeding, and kept going. The whispers returned. Not the chorus from the house, different now. Deeper. Older. The voice of the woods themselves, groaning and sighing with the storm. "Stay. Stay. Stay." "No!" Clara screamed, her voice cracking. I'm not yours! Her flashlight flickered wildly, beams strobing across trunks that seemed closer than before, narrowing the path. She burst through another thicket, only to stumble into a place she recognized with a cold, sinking dread. The clearing again. The same pool of water. Her own muddy footprints circling back. Her stomach lurched. No, 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 no! The lantern glow spilled into the clearing behind her. The figure stepped out once more, rain dripping from the brim of its hat, mouth curving wider in that too long smile. You can't leave, it rasped. Not until the house is finished with you. Clara's body shook. The weight of the storm, the woods, the figure, it all pressed down on her. And then lightning tore the sky again. For a split second, she saw past the trees, the faint outline of the house's roofline, closer than it should have been. As if the forest had turned her around and delivered her back to where she started. The lantern bearer tilted its head toward the same sight. Then, softly, it chuckled. The sound of that chuckle crawled up Clara's spine, cold and oily. It wasn't laughter like any she'd ever heard. It was hollow, as though echoing through a throat not made for human sound. She staggered back a step, her flashlight beam trembling between the figure and the looming roofline behind it. The house rose above the trees, impossibly close, as if the forest itself had carried her back in its branches. Its windows glimmered faintly, reflecting lightning in brief, sharp flashes, like eyes opening and closing. Clara's chest hitched with every ragged breath. No, I won't go back, she whispered, though her voice sounded more like a plea than a vow. The lantern bearer tilted its head, rainwater dripping from the brim of its hat. You will, it rasped. You always do. The chorus of whispers swelled again, seeping from the trees, from the sodden earth, from the very storm itself. They wrapped around her like invisible hands, urging, pulling, pressing her toward the looming porch. Inside. 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 Clara spun, desperate for another way. The forest stretched in every direction, but the trunks shifted when she moved, narrowing, closing, funneling her. Every path ended in shadows too dense to push through. The house. Always the house. Her body shook with exhaustion, but her legs carried her forward, stumbling across the clearing. Mud sucked at her shoes, pulling as though reluctant to let her go. She wrenched free and kept going, eyes fixed on the porch steps. The open door gaped wider now, blacker than the storm, its edges warped with shadow. Lightning flashed again, and for a heartbeat she thought she saw figures standing inside, tall, thin silhouettes pressed just beyond the threshold, waiting. She faltered, slowing. The porch swing creaked gently in the wind, a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. The lantern's glow spilled into the clearing behind her. She didn't need to look to know the figure had followed. The air thickened, heavy with its presence. Clara's breath came in short, panicked bursts. Her mind screamed to keep running, but her feet refused. She stood at the base of the porch steps, the house towering above her, its windows watching, its walls groaning with something that sounded alarmingly like breath. She whispered to herself, trembling, "If I go in, I'll never come out again." And then, from inside the doorway, she heard her grandmother's voice once more. "Clara, be a good girl and come back where you belong." Clara's legs trembled as she stood at the porch steps, staring into the house's dark mouth. Every instinct screamed to run, to fight, to resist, but the storm and the forest pressed close at her back, leaving nowhere else to go. The lantern's glow lingered behind her. She dared a glance over her shoulder. The figure stood at the edge of the clearing, tall and still, the lantern dangling idly from its hand. Its head tilted as though watching with faint amusement, that too wide smile just visible beneath the dripping brim of its hat. It didn't move closer. It didn't need to. The pressure came from within, from the house itself. The whispers spilled from the doorway, curling into the storm like smoke. "Come in, Clara! Come in! Home!" Her throat tightened. She wiped rain from her face with a shaking hand. "It's just a house," she whispered hoarsely. "Just wood and walls. Nothing more." But the words felt like lies. Her foot lifted. One step onto the porch. The boards groaned under her weight, bending slightly, almost welcoming. The swing creaked harder, rocking in rhythm with her heartbeat. She placed her hand on the frame of the open door. The wood was warm, pulsing faintly, as though it had veins. She snatched her hand back, bow rising in her throat. The voices hushed at once, a silence so sudden it rang in her ears. The storm seemed to fade too, muffled, as if she'd already stepped into another world. Her chest heaved. "If I go in," she whispered, "you'll have me." The hush deepened. Then, softly, tenderly, "We already do." Her knees buckled. She stumbled forward, across the threshold. The moment her foot touched the hallway floor, the door slammed shut behind her with a thunderous crack. Darkness swallowed her. The flashlight flickered once in her hand before sputtering out completely. She was blind. Blind, except for the faintest glow ahead, a sickly golden light spilling from beneath the door at the end of the hall. The same door she noticed when she first arrived. Too tall. Too narrow. Crooked in its frame. Her stomach turned cold. From somewhere deeper in the house came the sound of footsteps. Slow. Heavy. And far too many at once. Clara's breath came fast, every inhale jagged against her ribs. The darkness pressed close, thick and suffocating, broken only by the thin golden light seeping from beneath the crooked door at the far end of the hall. Her flashlight was dead. She smacked it against her palm, once, twice. Nothing. Just the sound of hollow plastic echoing against the silence. "Fine," she whispered, though her voice shook. "Fine. I don't need it. I'll just go." But she didn't move toward the door. Not yet. Her body remained frozen, every instinct screaming that to step closer would be to step into something final. The footsteps echoed again. Not from behind, not above, from everywhere. The ceiling, the walls, the very floor beneath her feet seemed alive with movement, like the scurrying of countless feet hidden just out of sight. Clara pressed her back against the wall, hands trembling. "You're not real. None of you are real." A pause. Then, from the golden-lit door, a reply. "Neither are you." The words were quiet, but they carried, cutting through the silence like a blade. Her stomach clenched, bow rising at the back of her throat. She pushed off from the wall and stumbled forward, one hand trailing along the peeling wallpaper, her other clutching the dead flashlight like a weapon. Each step seemed longer than the last, as though the hallway stretched to keep her walking. The closer she drew, the warmer the air became. The faint scent of iron drifted from the gap beneath the door, sharp and metallic, mixed with something sweet and rotting. Her knees trembled. "Don't open it," she whispered to herself. "Don't." But the house disagreed. The whispers rose again, low and insistent. "Open it, Clara! Open it!" See. The floor groaned under her feet, tilting slightly, nudging her forward. Her fingertips brushed the crooked frame. Warm. Pulsing, like a living thing. She gasped, yanking her hand away, but the knob turned on its own, clicking softly. Light spilled wider, flooding the hall in a golden wash. Clara raised her hand against the glare, heart hammering. Slowly, trembling, she pushed the door open. What waited beyond was not a room. It was a staircase. Narrow. Descending. The golden light poured up from its depths like liquid, bathing the walls in a sickly glow. The air that rose with it was damp, fetid, and alive with whispers too faint to understand. And from far below, something knocked. Once. Twice. Then, a slow scrape, as if something enormous had begun to rise. Clara gripped the doorframe, her nails biting into the warped wood. The staircase yawned before her, narrow and steep, its steps swallowed in the golden glow rising from below. Each breath she drew carried the damp, metallic scent of rust and rot coating her tongue like copper. The knocking echoed again, faint but deliberate. Once. Twice. Followed by the long, dragging scrape of something shifting in the dark. Her mind screamed to shut the door, to run, to throw herself at the windows if she had to, but her body betrayed her. Her feet moved forward tentative, her weight pressing onto the first step. The wood groaned under her, a sound too much like a sigh. "No," she whispered, voice trembling. "I don't want to go down there." The chorus rose in answer, low and coaxing. "Yes, Clara. Down. Down. Belong." Her legs shook as she gripped the banister. It was warm, slick with something she didn't want to identify. The glow pulsed stronger the further she descended, making the shadows behind her seem impossibly black, as though the house had sealed her escape. Each step carried her deeper into a place that didn't feel like it belonged to the house at all. The air grew heavier, thick with moisture, and the walls pressed closer, narrowing into rough stone as if she'd slipped into the earth itself. She paused halfway down, chest heaving. The whispers hushed. For a moment there was only silence. Then, softly, a single voice rose from below, her grandmother's again, warm, familiar, impossibly close. "Clara, darling, I've been waiting for you." Her throat constricted. "You're not her," she rasped. "She's gone. She's—" The voice interrupted, sharp now, tinged with command. "Don't talk back. Come down." The steps creaked louder as she resumed, though she couldn't remember deciding to move. The glow brightened, seeping through the cracks of the final door at the bottom of the stair. Its frame bulged as if straining to hold something inside. Clara froze at the threshold, every nerve screaming. Her hand hovered over the knob. From the other side came a sound so wet and heavy it turned her stomach. A slithering. A dragging. Something vast and alive shifting against the floor. And then, just as her trembling fingers brushed the knob, something knocked back. Once. Twice. The knocks reverberated through the wood, deep and deliberate, like fists too large for human hands. Clara flinched, her heart slamming against her ribs. The banister beneath her palm vibrated faintly with each strike, as though the entire staircase shuddered in response. Her throat worked against the dryness. "Don't open it," she begged herself. "Please don't." The whispers surged at once, crowding her ears until she could hardly think. "Open it! Open it! Open it!" The knob twisted on its own, groaning in its socket. Light seeped through the widening crack, bright and golden, but wrong, too thick, too heavy, as if the glow itself carried weight. Clara raised her arm against it, her eyes burning. The door creaked wider. The stench hit her, copper and rot, damp stone, and something acrid that clawed at her lungs. She gagged, choking down bile. And then she saw inside. It was not a room. Not really. The space opened into a cavernous hollow beneath the house, walls of rough stone slick with moisture. The golden light poured from the center, from a pit in the earth rimmed with blackened timber and rusted chains that dangled uselessly into the dark. The pit seethed. Shapes writhed just below the surface of the glow, indistinct yet massive, like shadows twisting in molten liquid. Clawed hands, too many, surfaced for moments before sinking again. Faces pressed upward, mouths opening in silent screams before dissolving back into the roiling light. Clara stumbled back, her shoulders slamming against the wall. Her flashlight slipped from her hand, clattering down the last few steps. Its dead plastic body rolled to the pit's edge and stopped. A voice rose from within the glow, dozens, hundreds layered into one. "Welcome home, Clara." Her stomach lurched. She shook her head violently. "No. No, this isn't real. I'm dreaming. The glow pulsed, a wave of heat brushing her face. From the pit, something began to rise. A hand, pale, slick, impossibly long. Its fingers ended in blackened nails that dug furrows into the stone as it pulled itself upward. Another hand followed, then the suggestion of a face, eyeless, mouth stretched too wide, jaw unhinged in a grin that bled golden light. The cavern trembled as the thing began to haul its bulk from the pit. The whispers swelled to a roar. "Stay! Stay! Stay!" Clara staggered back, her heel catching the stair. She nearly toppled, but caught herself against the wall, her chest heaving. Her only thought was escape, but the staircase behind her had vanished into shadow, too deep and thick to see through. The house had her now. And the thing was climbing out to greet her. The cavern shuddered as the creature dragged itself higher, its hands gouging deep trenches in the stone. Golden light spilled from its mouth, leaking between jagged teeth that seemed too many, too sharp. The sound it made wasn't a growl, nor a scream, but something between, a wet exhalation, thick with hunger. Clara's back pressed hard against the wall, her chest heaving. Every instinct screamed to run, but the staircase behind her stretched impossibly far, swallowed in shadow. No way up. No way out. Her trembling hand brushed the wall, slick with damp. She scraped her fingers against it, desperate for something solid to anchor her. "This isn't happening," she whispered, over and over, like a mantra. "This isn't real, this isn't real." But the creature disagreed. It pulled higher, its torso emerging, long ribs protruding through translucent flesh that seemed to shimmer like glass. Beneath that surface, Clara thought she saw faces, countless, pressed and screaming, trapped beneath its skin. For a heartbeat she swore she recognized one. A stern mouth, tight eyes. Her grandmother. Her stomach flipped violently. She gagged, while burning the back of her throat. The thing tilted its head toward her. Though it had no eyes, the weight of its focus pinned her in place. Its jaw widened, cracking open until the golden light inside burned too bright to look at directly. And then it spoke. Not in whispers. In a voice that shook the cavern. "You've come home, Clara." Her knees buckled. She dropped to the stone floor, palms stinging as they slapped the ground. "I don't belong to you," she gasped, though the words trembled with doubt. The roar of voices answered, erupting from the pit, from the walls, from inside her skull. "You always did. You always will." The chains dangling from the pit snapped taut, rattling as though pulled by invisible hands. One cracked free, whipping across the cavern, slamming into the floor just feet from where she crouched. Sparks flew. Clara screamed, scrambling backward along the wall. Her fingers brushed something hard, her dead flashlight, the one that had rolled earlier. She snatched it up like a weapon, clutching it tight though it offered no light, no power. The creature dragged another arm free, claws gouging deep furrows. The air thickened with heat, the glow searing her skin. Behind her, the stairwell shifted, shadows rippling like a curtain. For the briefest instant, she thought she saw an opening, a pale square of light far above, as though the house itself had left her an escape. But to reach it, she would have to turn her back on the thing pulling free from the pit. The faint square of light above flickered like a dying candle, impossibly far yet tantalizing, a promise of escape. Clara's chest hitched with every shallow breath as she stared up at it. Could she reach it? Could she climb fast enough before the shadows closed it again? The cavern shook. She flinched, dragging her gaze back to the pit. The creature had hauled itself higher. Its torso writhed with faces pressing outward, their mouths opening and closing in silent cries before sinking back into its slick, translucent skin. Each time it moved, the golden glow bled brighter, spilling across the stone like liquid fire. And then came the voice, not the layered chorus this time, but a single, clear tone that vibrated through her bones. "Stay." It was command, not plea. Clara's throat tightened. She clutched the dead flashlight tighter, her knuckles white, her body trembling with the weight of the decision clawing at her mind. Run, or face it. Her grandmother's face pressed briefly against the creature's ribs again, pale and stern, lips curling into a cruel imitation of a smile. "Grandma," Clara whispered, tears spilling hot down her cheeks. "You're not real. You're not her." The thing tilted its massive head. The chains rattled, snapping against stone, as though mocking her defiance. The square of light above pulsed, dimming, as if the window of escape were closing. Clara's body acted before her mind could catch up. She scrambled to her feet, slipping on the wet stone, and bolted toward the stairwell. The shadows there writhed, thick and twisting, but she plunged into them anyway, teeth gritted, heart hammering. For a heartbeat it felt like drowning, like pushing through oil that filled her nose and mouth. But then the air broke open, and her hands caught the edge of a step. The cavern roared behind her, the creature's voice booming with fury. You are ours. Clara dragged herself upward, clawing at each step, her ribs screaming with pain. The golden light flared at her back, too bright, too hot. Chains whipped through the air, striking the walls, the ceiling, cracking stone. But she kept climbing, faster, higher, desperate. Above, the square of light widened, brighter now, pulling her toward it. The stairwell shook violently, cracks spidering through the stone. A chain lashed past her, missing her leg by inches, embedding itself in the wall. Clara screamed and forced herself upward, one step after another, as the cavern below erupted with voices, not whispers now, but screams. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Clara's hands slipped against the slick stone, nails tearing, skin raw, but she refused to let go. The stairwell bucked beneath her like a living thing, groaning as cracks raced across its walls. Above, the square of light beckoned. Bright, cold, clean, so unlike the molten glow below. It looked like daylight, though some part of her doubted it was. Still, it was the only way out. Her chest heaved as she pulled herself higher, her ribs stabbing with each breath. Mud and sweat stung her eyes, mixing with tears. The house groaned around her, its voice a grinding rumble in the walls. Whispers slithered down the stairwell like roots, tangling in her ears. Don't leave. Don't leave us, Clara. We made this place for you. She grit her teeth, dragging herself up another step, then another. Her foot slipped, scraping raw against stone, but she forced herself onward. The cavern below roared. Chains lashed upward like striking serpents, their links glowing faintly with the golden light. One snapped past her face, missing by inches, spraying shards of stone. Another wrapped briefly around her ankle, burning hot against her skin. She shrieked and kicked free, leaving a welt that blistered instantly. The light above flickered, dimming as though reacting to her struggle. Panic surged in her chest. If it closed, if it vanished, she'd be swallowed forever. Please, she gasped, her voice ragged. Please stay open. The stairwell walls constricted suddenly, narrowing until her shoulders scraped against both sides. The air grew thick, damp, pressing at her lungs. The house was squeezing, choking her climb. Clara screamed with effort, shoving herself higher, scraping skin from her arms as she forced her body through the narrowing throat of stone. Blood smeared the walls behind her. The whispers rose into wails. You belong to us. You always belong to us. Clara, stay. Her hand stretched upward. The square of light was closer now, just out of reach, pale and shining. She clawed at it desperately, fingers grasping empty air. Below, the creature bellowed, a sound so vast it shook the stairwell. The golden glow surged upward like a rising tide. Clara screamed, her voice raw, and threw herself at the light. Her fingers broke through. Her fingertips grazed the brilliance, and the stone around her seemed to ripple. She shoved harder, her body screaming in protest. The stairwell constricted further, ribs of rock closing around her like a tightening fist. For a heartbeat, she thought she'd be crushed, and then her hand broke through, plunging into cool air. With a desperate cry, Clara forced her shoulder after, wrenching herself free from the stone's grasp. Her body scraped raw, her clothes torn, but she pulled and clawed until she spilled through the square of light, collapsing onto a hard wooden floor. She gasped, coughing violently, the taste of iron thick on her tongue. For a long moment she lay sprawled, chest heaving, every nerve singing with pain. When she finally lifted her head, the sight froze her blood. She was back in the house. The entryway stretched before her, the grand staircase rising in its crooked glory, the faded rose wallpaper sagging, the photographs on the walls staring with obscured eyes. Everything as it had been when she first stepped inside. Her stomach dropped. No, she whispered, pushing herself up on shaking arms. No, I left. Behind her, the square of light was gone. The wall was seamless, papered, as though no door had ever existed. The storm raged faintly beyond the windows, but here the air was still. Too still. Clara staggered to her feet, swaying. Her ribs flared with agony. Her ankle throbbed from the chain's burn, but she moved anyway, stumbling toward the front door. If she could just get outside, the knob wouldn't turn. It rattled in her grasp, but the door stayed locked. Sealed. "Let me out!" she screamed, slamming her fists against the wood until her hands stung. "Do you hear me? Let me out!" The house answered with silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then, slowly, the swing creaked on the porch. Forward. Back. Forward. Her grandmother's voice drifted from the parlor, calm, clipped, unmistakable. "Clara. Why are you making such a fuss? Come sit. Be still. It's time to talk." Clara's throat closed. She turned, her breath shallow, her body trembling with a fear she could no longer contain. From the parlor doorway, a figure stepped into view. The figure took a step forward, its limbs bending wrong, cardigan sleeves stretching like skin pulled taut. Clara backed up the stairs, heart pounding so violently she thought it might break her ribs. Her voice cracked, high and desperate. "What do you want from me?" The thing's smile widened until it split its face. "Everything." The figure stepped into the entryway, framed by the parlor's arch. For an instant, Clara's mind betrayed her. She saw her grandmother, as she remembered, hair pinned tight, shoulders stooped, a cardigan draped neatly across thin arms. The faint scent of lavender drifted forward, clinging to the air like a memory. "Grandma." The words slipped out, trembling, unbidden. The figure smiled. A thin, precise smile, just as she remembered. "There you are. I thought you'd gotten yourself lost." The voice was warm, familiar, the tone that had once scolded Clara for muddy shoes and half-finished chores. Clara's chest ached. She shook her head violently. "No. You're not her. She's dead. I went to her funeral." The smile lingered. "Funerals don't mean much, dear. People see what they want to see. You've always been so gullible." The air thickened. Clara stumbled back a step, her shoulders striking the banister. "Stay away from me." Her grandmother, or the thing wearing her shape, tilted its head, eyes glinting in a way Clara had never seen before. "Too dark. Too hollow. Why would I hurt you, child? I took care of you when no one else would. And now it's your turn to stay. To keep me company. To give back." Clara's stomach twisted. "You're not her." The figure's smile faltered. The skin around its mouth cracked slightly, peeling like old paint. The voice deepened, just for an instant. Layered with too many echoes. "But I could be. If you let me." Clara's breath hitched. Her dead flashlight slipped from her grip and clattered against the floor. The sound made the figure flinch, its head snapping toward the noise with a twitch too fast, too sharp. When it turned back, the face had changed, no longer quite her grandmother's, but stretched, melting, eyes sinking into hollows too deep. The whispers swelled again, filling the house, rattling the frames on the walls. "Stay. Stay. Stay." At the far end of the hall, the crooked door glowed faintly again, golden light seeping from its frame. The same one that had led her down before. Her legs trembled. She whispered, voice breaking, "Not again. Please, not again." Behind her, the figure ascended the stairs. She heard the crack of each step beneath its weight. The crooked door pulsed brighter. The choice loomed once more: face what waited behind her, or open the door to what lay below. Clara spun, her feet pounding against the steps as she scrambled upward. The banister groaned beneath her grasp, sticky with the warmth that clung to her palm. Behind her, the figure's footsteps echoed, deliberate, unhurried, as though it knew she had nowhere to go. The upstairs hallway stretched before her, but it wasn't the same hallway she'd seen before. The wallpaper had sloughed off in long, curling strips, revealing damp wood that pulsed faintly like muscle. The photographs had changed too, no longer strangers, but her own childhood face repeated in every frame, each one staring wide-eyed, mouth stretched open in silent screams. Clara choked on a sob and staggered toward the first door. She wrenched it open. The bedroom she remembered, the four-poster bed, the cracked porcelain doll, was gone. In its place lay rows of hospital cots, each one occupied by a figure covered in white sheets. The air reeked of antiseptic and something sour, rotten beneath it. As her flashlight beam flickered across the room, she realized the sheets were rising and falling. Breathing, the nearest one twitched. A hand, pale and skeletal, slid from beneath the coverlet, fingers flexing toward her. No, Clara gasped, slamming the door shut with all her strength. She stumbled down the hall, heart hammering, and yanked open the second door. The rocking chair remained, but now it moved violently, slamming back and forth with bone-jarring force. The boxes were split open, their contents spilled, toys, clothes, letters, all shredded into ribbons. The shredded fabric writhed faintly, as though alive. From within the mess, a small stuffed bear lifted its head. Its button eyes gleamed, its stitched mouth splitting wider into a jagged grin. Clara screamed and kicked the door closed, backing into the wall. The whispers crowded closer, filling the hallway. No more running. No more doors. Just stay. The corridor hummed louder, every door rattling slightly in its frame. Choose. Choose. Her legs shook. Her throat ached with fear. Behind one of these doors lay whatever the house demanded she face, and she knew it would not let her stall forever. The crooked door pulsed like a heartbeat, golden light spilling through the cracks in uneven bursts. Behind her, the footsteps climbed steadily, each thud of the figure's weight echoing through the stairs. Clara's pulse raced to match it. She pressed her back against the wall, trembling. Not again, she whispered. Not down there. Not again. But the house had other plans. The whispers swelled, louder now, overlapping until they were deafening. Down. 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 Her body moved before her mind agreed. She stumbled toward the crooked frame, her hands slamming against the warm wood. The knob turned easily beneath her slick palm, as though it had been waiting for her touch. The golden light flared, washing over her face. She squinted, hard hammering, and shoved the door open. Instead of a staircase, she found herself staring into a narrow corridor. The walls closed tight on either side, lined with dozens of doors, each identical, each crooked, each leaking a different shade of light. Some glowed blue, others green, others red, some pulsing faintly like veins. The air was thick and damp, filled with the low hum of voices whispering in languages she couldn't understand. Clara staggered a step inside, disoriented. When she turned, the hallway behind her was gone. No stairs. No wallpaper. No figure. Only more doors stretching into darkness. Her stomach dropped. No, no, no. No. The whispers shifted, clearer now, slithering through the corridor. Choose. Her hand hovered near the nearest knob, glowing faintly blue. The wood vibrated under her palm like it was breathing. She snatched her hand back, bow rising in her throat. She spun to another door, this one glowing red. From behind it came a muffled sob, the sound of a child crying. Help me, a faint voice whimpered. Clara's breath itched. Her skin prickled as her memory stirred, the sound too familiar. She'd heard it before, long ago, when she was very small, when she had been the one crying. Clara's chest heaved, torn between terror and grief so sharp it hurt. She whispered hoarsely, "You're not real. You're not." The little girl's sobs broke into screams, raw, agonized, echoing off the walls until they shook. The red light flared, blinding. Clara raised her hands to shield her eyes, heart pounding, and when she lowered them, the bed was empty. The child was gone. Clara's body trembled, every nerve screaming at her to turn back. But there was no back, only endless crooked doors breathing softly in the dark. The red one pulsed stronger now, the muffled sobs behind it rising into choked cries. "Help me," the voice whimpered again. Small, fragile, childlike. Her stomach clenched. She whispered, "That's not real. That's not me. It can't be." But she remembered. She remembered being that child, weeping alone in this very house when her parents left her for weekends with her grandmother. Crying until her throat burned, only to be met with the sharp scold of, "Quiet down. No one wants to hear it." The sobbing behind the door deepened, broken by hiccuping breaths. Clara squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaking down her face. "It's a trick," she told herself. It's not real. The chorus hissed in her ear. Choose. Her hand lifted, fingers trembling as they closed around the knob. The wood throbbed beneath her palm, hot as a fever. She swallowed back bile and turned it. The door creaked open, spilling red light into the corridor. Inside was a small bedroom, her childhood bedroom. The faded quilt on the bed, the stack of picture books in the corner, the chipped dresser with stickers peeling at the edges. Everything as it had been when she was 6. And on the bed, curled into a tight ball, was a little girl. Clara's breath caught. The child had tangled hair, streaked with tears, her tiny shoulders shaking with sobs. When she lifted her head, Clara saw her own face staring back, younger, rounder, but unmistakably hers. The younger Clara wiped her nose with her sleeve, her eyes wide and wet. "I don't want to stay here," she whimpered. "Please, don't make me stay." Clara staggered backward, her hand flying to her mouth. "No, no, no, no." The whispers swelled around her, pressing against her skull. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The child stretched out a hand, fingers trembling. "Please take me with you. Don't leave me here alone." Every door in the corridor rattled at once, lights pulsing in sick rhythm. Voices rose from behind them, cries, whispers, laughter, all her own. The house wasn't just showing her things. It was accusing her, and it wanted her to open more. The silence after the screams was worse than the noise. Clara's ears rang, her pulse hammering against her throat as the red glow pulsed around her. The bed sat empty now, the quilt neatly smoothed as though no one had ever lain there. Her breath came in shallow gasps. "It wasn't real," she whispered. "It wasn't me. Just a trick." But her voice faltered because part of her knew the house had peeled something true from her memory and forced her to see it. The floorboards creaked. Her head snapped toward the dresser. Its drawers rattled faintly, one sliding open with a squeal. Something inside shifted. "Hello?" Clara's voice broke, thin and trembling. The drawer slid further, and a small hand emerged. Gray, mottled, too long-fingered for a child. Another followed, nails black and sharp, curling into the wood as it dragged itself out. Clara staggered back, her heel striking the door frame. The thing that pulled free was dressed in her childhood clothes, the faded pajamas with the bunny pattern she remembered too well. But its body was stretched wrong, its limbs thin as sticks, its head too large for its frame. The face was hers, too, a grotesque echo of the younger Clara who had begged her moments before. But the eyes were black voids. And the mouth split too wide, tearing the cheeks open until the smile nearly reached its ears. "Don't leave me again," it rasped, voice overlapping with the sobs she'd just heard. Clara screamed, slamming her shoulder into the frame as she tore herself back into the corridor. The door slammed shut behind her, shaking the wall. Her back pressed against the opposite side of the passage, chest heaving. The whispers hissed like laughter all around her. "You left her. You always leave her." Clara shook her head violently, tears streaking down her face. "No. I didn't. I couldn't help." The corridor pulsed with shifting colors, doors rattling in their frames like restless teeth. Clara pressed her hands over her ears, but the voices seeped through her skin, crowding her mind. "Choose. Choose. Choose." Her legs shook beneath her. She wanted to collapse, to curl into herself and vanish, but the house wouldn't allow stillness. The doors banged louder, each pulse of light strobing across her face until nausea rolled through her stomach. One door stilled. The others hushed. The glow of green light seeped around its frame, mossy and sickly, oozing across the floor like liquid. From behind it came no cries, no sobbing, only a low, steady hum, as though something vast and patient was waiting just beyond. Clara's chest tightened. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't do another one." The chorus hissed, sharp as knives. "Open." Her fingers moved without her consent, trembling as they curled around the knob. It was slick, damp, warm. She gagged but turned it anyway. The door swung open with a groan. The green glow revealed a cellar-like space, walls slick with moss, water dripping steadily into shallow pools on the floor. The smell of damp earth filled her lungs, heavy and suffocating. At the far end stood a chair. Wooden, plain, and bound to it with rusted chains was a figure. It lifted its head slowly when she entered. A man's face, hollow-eyed, skin sagging and pale. His mouth opened, and the steady hum swelled into words. "You left me here." Clara froze, bow rising in her throat. "I don't know you." The man's lips cracked into a grin too wide, teeth blackened. "Don't you?" The chains rattled. The figure leaned forward, impossibly far, the links straining and groaning until sparks flew. "I've been waiting a long time, Clara. All of us have." She stumbled back, nearly slipping in the shallow water. The moss underfoot writhed faintly, clinging to her shoes like fingers. The man's voice deepened, layered with others now, echoing through the cellar. "We belong to you. And you belong to us." The chain snapped. Clara screamed and bolted, slamming the door shut with all her weight. The corridor shook, the other doors rattling violently as if in applause. Her body trembled, soaked and filthy, her throat raw from screaming. The whispers swelled again, triumphant. "More! More! Open more!" Clara staggered down the corridor, light pulsing on every side. She knew the house wouldn't let her stop. It would keep forcing her to choose until she had nothing left. And she had the sinking dread that each door brought her closer to something final. Clara staggered along the corridor, every breath ragged, every step heavier than the last. The glow from the doors pulsed in rapid rhythm, reds, blues, greens, yellows, a kaleidoscope of sickly light that left her dizzy. The whispers pressed close, hissing, demanding. More! 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 She clutched her stomach, bow rising, shaking her head violently. "No more! I can't!" The corridor silenced her. All the doors stilled at once. Their lights dimmed until only one remained. At the far end, a single door glowed black. Not the absence of light, but a living, swallowing darkness that devoured the glow of the others. The air around it seemed colder, heavier, dragging at her lungs. Her legs locked. "No," she whispered. "I won't." The floor shifted beneath her feet, tilting subtly. The corridor funneled her forward like a throat swallowing down prey. She dug her nails into the wall, scraping splinters of wood beneath her skin, but the surface pulsed like muscle, slick with warmth, shoving her hand loose. The whispers swelled again. Not urging this time. Commanding. "Open!" Her body lurched, shoved by invisible hands. She stumbled closer to the black door, tears streaking her dirt-stained face. Her throat tore with a hoarse cry. "Stop it! Stop making me!" But the knob was already beneath her palm. Ice cold. So cold her skin stuck to it, burning. She tried to pull away, but her hand refused to release. Her breath came in sharp sobs. "Please, please, no!" The door opened. A void yawned beyond, endless dark, swallowing sound, swallowing breath. No walls. No floor. No ceiling. Only emptiness, stretching forever. And within it, shapes floated. Dozens. Hundreds. Twisting like drowned bodies suspended in black water, their limbs trailing, their faces turned upward. They were featureless at first, blurred and indistinct. But as Clara's gaze sharpened, she saw each face shift, reform, every one of them hers. Hundreds of Claras, mouths open in silent screams, eyes wide with terror, drifting in the dark like discarded dolls. Her knees buckled. "No. No, no, no!" The closest one stirred. Its eyes snapped to hers, void black and unblinking. Its mouth stretched wider, and when it screamed, the void itself shook. The rest joined in, a chorus of her own voices shrieking. "Stay!" The pull of the void yanked at her chest, her arms, her very bones, dragging her forward into herself. Clara dug her heels into the floor, her shoes skidding across the boards as the blackness dragged at her. The air howled, rushing past her ears as though the corridor itself were being emptied into the void. Her arms windmilled, her fingers clawing desperately for something to hold, but the walls had melted into smooth, shifting shadow. Her throat tore with a scream. "No! I'm not yours!" The voices answered in perfect unison, 100 variations of her own voice shrieking from the void. "You always were!" The nearest Clara drifted closer, her hair fanning in invisible currents, her eyes pits of darkness. She reached out with a pale hand, fingers stretching too far, bending unnaturally as they brushed Clara's wrist. The cold was unbearable. It wasn't just touch, it was theft. The mirrored self dragged at her skin, her blood, her breath, pulling pieces of her into the void. Clara's knees buckled. Her vision blurred at the edges. "No, stop. I'm real. I'm the real one." The face smiled, her own face stretched too wide. "We're all real." With a violent jerk, the shadow Clara tried to yank her forward. Clara screamed and twisted, her body straining until her joints ached. The corridor shuddered around her, the floorboards splintering. Her hand brushed something solid, a knob. Another door, hidden in the shifting dark, its outline faint but there. Without thinking, she grabbed it, wrenching herself sideways with all her strength. The pull lessened for a heartbeat, just enough for her to shove herself through. She tumbled onto solid wood, coughing, sobbing, her body shaking uncontrollably. Behind her, the black door slammed shut with a boom that rattled her bones. The whispers hissed furiously, as though denied their feast. Clara lay sprawled on the floor, gasping, clutching her burned wrist where the mirror self had touched her. The skin there was pale, almost translucent, faint shapes writhing just beneath the surface. She gagged, curling against the wall. "What do you want from me?" she sobbed. The corridor hummed, quieter now, like a satisfied animal settling back to rest. "Everything." Ahead of her, another door glowed faintly, not red, not green, not black, but pale white, steady and calm. It felt different. It felt like an ending. Clara staggered to her feet, every muscle trembling. The pale glow from the white door spilled down the corridor in a steady wash, soft yet unyielding, cutting through the shifting shadows like moonlight. Unlike the others, it didn't pulse, didn't rattle in its frame. It simply waited. Her chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. "No more," she whispered, voice raw. "I can't open any more." But even as she said it, her body betrayed her, her legs carrying her forward, step by step, as though drawn by a thread knotted deep in her chest. The corridor hushed. The other doors stilled, their lights fading, their whispers quieting. All focus turned to this single threshold. Clara reached it. The knob was cool under her hand, not fever-hot or ice-burn like the others. Smooth. Familiar, almost. She hesitated, her forehead pressed to the wood. "Please," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "Let this be real. Let this be out." The silence that followed was deep, absolute. She turned the knob. The door opened with no groan, no resistance. Just a soft sigh of air. On the other side lay a room. Bright. Clean. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains, painting the floor in gentle patterns. A small round table sat near the window, set with teacups and a pot that still steamed faintly. The scent of lavender drifted in the air. And sitting at the table was her grandmother. Not twisted, not stretched, not hollow-eyed. Just as Clara remembered her in rare, gentler moments. Hands folded neatly, cardigan draped across her shoulders, eyes warm with faint amusement. "Clara," she said, her voice soft, steady. "There you are. Come sit with me. You look exhausted." Clara's body sagged, every ounce of tension threatening to collapse into the sight. Her knees wobbled. "No, this isn't real. You're not her. You can't be." Her grandmother smiled, pouring tea into a delicate china cup. The sound was soothing, familiar, so achingly normal. "Don't be silly, child. Of course I am. Who else would wait for you here?" The chair across from her scraped gently back, as if pulled by invisible hands. Waiting. Inviting. Clara's pulse thudded in her ears. The chair across from her grandmother sat empty, waiting. Its carved wooden legs gleamed faintly in the sunlight, polished as if it had never known dust. Steam curled lazily from the teacup, fragrant and warm, lavender and honey threading through the air. Clara's body ached for it, the stillness, the quiet. After everything, the thought of sitting down, of closing her eyes for just a moment, was almost unbearable in its appeal. Her grandmother's eyes softened, kind in a way they had rarely been in life. "Come now, Clara. Sit. You've been running around like a frightened rabbit. Let me take care of you." Clara shook her head violently, her hair dripping sweat and grime. "No. You're not her. You can't be." The smile didn't falter. "Of course I am. Don't you remember the garden? The lemonade on the porch? The stories before bed?" Memories stirred, faint, fleeting moments from long ago, buried beneath sharper recollections of stern commands and cold silence. They flickered now with startling clarity, her grandmother's voice reading aloud, her hands smoothing Clara's hair. Clara's lips trembled. "Stop. You're using her." Her grandmother leaned forward, folding her hands. "Child, you've made yourself sick with grief and fear. Everything you've seen, the shadows, the whispers, that horrid thing in the pit, it was all your mind unraveling. I've been waiting here, patiently, for you to stop fighting." The chair creaked softly again, pushing itself closer to the table. Clara's legs wavered. She longed to collapse into it, to sink into the illusion, to let herself believe that maybe this was the truth, that maybe the nightmare would end if she simply obeyed. But then she glanced at the teacup. The steam rose thicker, twisting strangely in the light. For a split second, the shape of a face formed in it, wide-mouthed, grinning. And in the reflection on the porcelain, she didn't see her grandmother at all. She saw the house. The walls. The windows. Watching. Her breath hitched. Her hands curled into fists. "No. You're not her. And I won't sit." The smile faltered. For the first time, the thing's expression cracked, revealing teeth too sharp behind the lips. The air chilled, the lavender scent souring into rot. The grandmother shape's voice deepened, layered with dozens of others. "Then stand. But you will never leave." The sunlight dimmed. The walls trembled. The teacup rattled on its saucer until it shattered, spilling black liquid across the table. Clara staggered backward as the room groaned, splitting at the seams. The walls of the bright parlor cracked like eggshells, the wallpaper splitting in jagged lines. Sunlight faltered, stuttering in and out, as though the ceiling itself were tearing open to reveal a darker sky. The lace curtains shriveled into tatters, their edges smoldering before falling to ash. Clara stumbled backward, shielding her face from the rain of plaster and dust. The table split down the middle with a violent crack, the shattered teacups sliding into the black liquid that gushed like tar across the floor. Her grandmother's shape sat perfectly still amid the chaos, smiling too widely, her eyes twin hollows that drank in the collapsing light. "You never learned, child. Always so stubborn. Always so ungrateful." The words layered deeper, older, until they weren't her grandmother's voice at all. "Always ours." The floor gave way beneath Clara's feet. She screamed as the boards dropped, splintering into nothingness, and she plunged into the dark. Wind howled around her, a rushing current pulling her downward. Shadows streaked past, twisting into shapes of doors, stairwells, windows, all of them crooked, all of them opening and slamming shut as she fell. Her body hit hard ground with a bone-rattling thud. For a long moment, she lay stunned, the air torn from her lungs. When she finally forced her eyes open, she found herself in a vast chamber unlike anything above. The walls pulsed with veins of faint golden light, like the inside of some colossal, living organ. The ceiling arched high, ribbed and damp, dripping with condensation. And in the center of the chamber rose a structure, a grotesque mimicry of a house built from flesh and bone. Its walls heaved as though breathing, its windows gaped like open eyes, and its door hung ajar, leaking golden glow. Clara's stomach lurched violently. She scrambled to her feet, her legs trembling beneath her. "No," she whispered, voice breaking. "This isn't real. This can't be real." But the whispers surrounded her, curling from the living walls, from the open door, from the marrow of the chamber itself. The heart of the house. The heart of us. Welcome home, Clara. The door of the flesh house creaked wider, waiting. The flesh house loomed, its walls slick with moisture, its timbers of bone stretching upward into a grotesque peak. Each breath it took rattled the chamber, the sound like 1,000 doors creaking open at once. The golden glow leaking from its doorway pulsed with rhythm, like blood pumping through veins. Clara pressed her back to the chamber wall, her nails digging into the pulsing surface. The warmth beneath her fingertips throbbed in time with her heartbeat. She gagged, yanking her hand away, smearing slime across her sleeve. "I won't go in," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You can't make me." The whispers answered, louder now, insistent. "In. In. In." Her legs buckled as the ground beneath her shifted. The chamber floor rippled, pushing her forward with each pulse. She stumbled, fighting against it, but every step shoved her closer to the door that waited like an open mouth. From within came the sound of footsteps. Heavy. Too many at once. And under them, the faint scrape of chains dragging against stone. Clara's chest heaved. "Please," she cried, voice breaking. "I don't want this. I don't want to be here." The door of the flesh house creaked wider, black slime dripping from its edges. The golden glow spilled stronger, blinding her eyes until she had to raise her arm to shield them. And then, her grandmother's voice again. Calm. Clipped. Familiar. "Clara, don't be dramatic. Come inside where it's safe." Tears burned down her cheeks. She shook her head violently. "You're not her." The voice deepened, cracked, layered with dozens more until it roared. "We are all her. We are all you. And you belong inside." The chamber floor surged, hurling her forward. Clara screamed as she was flung through the open doorway, her hands clawing uselessly at the frame as she tumbled into the golden glow. Inside, everything shifted. The air was hot, stifling, thick with the smell of blood and rot. The walls bent close, lined with shelves stacked with jars. Each jar glowed faintly, filled with swirling shadows. Clara staggered forward, her hand brushing one. The shadow within snapped to the glass, pressing against it. Her own face stared back at her, lips moving soundlessly, eyes wide with panic. Her stomach turned. Every jar on the shelf rattled in unison, the whispers spilling from them now, hundreds of her own voices overlapping in a cacophony. "You're late. You're late. You should have been here sooner." Clara reeled back, bow rising in her throat. She wasn't in a house anymore. She was in herself. The shelves stretched endlessly, stacked high to the curved ceiling, each jar trembling faintly in the golden glow. Shadows writhed within them, distorted faces pressed against the glass, lips mouthing silent words, eyes rolling in panic or fury. Clara stumbled between the rows, her chest heaving. Everywhere she turned, she was confronted with herself. Some jars held a younger Clara, wide-eyed and small. Others showed her as she was now, dirt-smeared, hollow-eyed, trembling. And some revealed versions she had never seen, older, thinner, gaunt with age, her skin lined with grief. Her voice cracked as she whispered, What is this?" The whispers answered from every jar at once, rattling the shelves. "Every Clara. Every you. Every piece we've taken." Her hands shook violently. She reached for one jar, fingers trembling as she lifted it from the shelf. The glass was cold, slick with condensation. Inside, the shadow Clara pressed its face to hers, its mouth opening wide in a scream she couldn't hear. The sound came anyway, inside her skull, sharp and shrill. Clara dropped the jar. It shattered on the ground, glass spraying across her shoes. Black smoke spilled out, writhing upward before dissolving into the air. For a moment, the chamber seemed to brighten, as though one thread had been cut loose. But the other jars shook violently, their inhabitants pounding against the glass. A storm of whispers rose in furious chorus. "No! No! Don't let her out! She belongs to us!" Clara staggered back, tripping over shards. Pain lanced through her ankle as glass cut deep, but she forced herself up again, clutching the shelf for balance. Her grandmother's voice curled through the roar, calm and precise. "Child, put it back. Don't make a mess." Clara shook her head violently, tears streaming. "You're not her! You're not!" The jars rattled harder, some tumbling from shelves and shattering. Shadows spilled into the chamber, coiling around her legs, her arms cold as ice water. Faces formed in the smoke, dozens of her own, shrieking with rage. "You don't get to leave! You don't get to break us! You are us!" Clara clawed at the smoke, choking, gagging as it forced its way down her throat. The shelves groaned, tilting, jars crashing to the ground one by one, releasing more writhing shadows into the golden light. The chamber filled with Claras, all of them screaming, all of them reaching. Clara fell to her knees, the swarm engulfing her. And then, deep within the chaos, one voice cut through, softer, smaller. Her own voice, as a child. "Please! Let me out!" The swarm pressed tighter, smoke fingers clawing at her skin, forcing themselves into her mouth and nose. Clara gagged, thrashing, but every movement tangled her deeper in the black haze. Dozens of her own faces flickered around her, shrieking, laughing, howling in fury. But beneath it all, she heard the child's voice again, thin, small, trembling. "Please! I don't want to stay here anymore." Her chest seized. It was the same voice she had heard behind the red door, the sobbing version of herself as a child. The one she hadn't saved. Clara forced her hands upward, clawing through the haze. "Where are you?" she cried, choking on the smoke. "I'll find you!" The shadows screamed in protest, wrapping tighter around her arms, dragging her toward the shelves. Faces pressed against her skin, her own eyes staring back at her in endless repetition. "Stay! Stay! Stay!" She staggered forward anyway, glass crunching beneath her bleeding feet. Her fingers brushed cold jars, their surfaces slick. One after another, they rattled violently under her touch, but she pushed on, drawn by that fragile voice. "Here," the child whispered. "Here." Her hand closed around the jar low on the shelf, small enough to cradle in her palms. Inside, the shadow pressed close, a little girl's face, tear-streaked, eyes wide with fear. Clara's throat tightened. "It's you," she whispered. "It's me." The swarm shrieked. Chains rattled above. The chambers shook violently as though the house itself were trying to rip the jar from her grip. "Don't break it! Don't break it! She belongs!" Clara clutched the jar to her chest, stumbling backward. The child inside mouthed one word over and over. "Out!" Tears blurred her vision. With a hoarse scream, Clara hurled the jar to the floor. It shattered. The child Clara spilled out in a burst of light, collapsing onto the floor as though reborn. She looked up at Clara, eyes still wet, voice trembling. "Thank you?" Clara dropped to her knees, reaching for her, but the swarm howled, surging inward, trying to swallow them both. The child grabbed Clara's hand with surprising strength. "Run!" The shelves toppled around them, jars smashing, shadows spilling. The chamber roared with fury. And somewhere deeper, something vast began to wake. The shelves crashed down in a domino of splintering wood and shattering glass. Each jar split open, spewing writhing shadows that screamed with Clara's voices. The chamber's walls pulsed violently, veins of golden light cracking wide until the glow spilled like molten blood across the floor. Clara staggered upright, clutching the child's hand. The small fingers dug into hers with desperate strength. "This way!" she shouted, though she had no idea where she was going. The floor buckled, pitching them sideways. They stumbled, nearly tumbling into the spreading glow. Faces swam in it, hundreds of Claras, their mouths open in wide, silent shrieks as the molten light swallowed them back into the house's veins. The child yanked her hand sharply. "Don't look at them! Run!" Clara forced her gaze forward, stumbling through the chaos. The whispers were no longer coaxing or commanding. They were furious, incoherent, a hurricane of her own voices shrieking. "Traitor! Thief! You belong to us!" Chains lashed down from the ceiling, glowing hot, whipping across the chamber like serpents. One slammed into the ground inches from Clara's foot, spraying sparks. Another wrapped around a toppled shelf and dragged it screaming into the golden pit. The child pulled her onward, weaving through the chaos with an agility Clara barely managed to match. Her lungs burned, her side stabbed with every step, but she couldn't let go. If she lost that tiny hand, she knew she'd be swallowed. Ahead, a gap yawned in the wall. Not a door this time, not glowing, but a jagged rupture that pulsed with faint white light. A way out. Clara's chest heaved with relief. There! The ground beneath them split, boards tearing apart into gaping cracks. The golden glow surged upward, trying to cut them off. The child leapt over one fissure, pulling Clara with her. Pain flared in Clara's leg as she landed, but she kept moving. Another chain lashed down, wrapping tight around Clara's ankle. She shrieked as the heat seared her skin, yanking her backward toward the pit. Her nails scraped the floor, desperate. The child threw her small body onto the chain, biting it with teeth too sharp for such a tiny mouth. The link sizzled, shrieked, and snapped. Clara stumbled forward, her ankle blistered and raw, but free. She scooped the child into her arms, running the last few steps toward the rupture. The chamber roared, every voice screaming in unison. You can't leave yourself! Clara dove through the crack, the white light swallowing her whole. She followed anyway. Each step echoed strangely, like walking across hollow ground. The corridor stretched on without end, and the further they went, the more the glow dimmed. Behind them, faint at first, the whispers began again. Clara. Clara. The child tightened her grip on Clara's hand and pulled her faster. Clara tumbled onto a cold floor, clutching the child tight against her chest. Her lungs burned as she gasped, her blistered ankle throbbing with each heartbeat. For a moment she lay there, stunned, ears ringing with the echo of the chamber's furious roar. When she finally forced herself upright, she realized they were no longer in the golden cavern. The world around them was white. A corridor stretched ahead, endless, its walls smooth and seamless, glowing faintly with pale light that had no source. No doors. No shadows. Just an empty path, sterile and silent. The child wriggled free from Clara's arms, standing barefoot on the cold floor. She looked smaller here, diminished somehow. Her head bowed. Clara brushed her tangled hair back gently. It's okay, she whispered, her voice hoarse. We're out. We made it out. The child didn't answer. Her small hand pointed down the corridor. Not out. Forward. Clara's heart sank. No. I can't keep going. Her knees buckled as she sank against the wall, tears burning her eyes. She was too tired. Too broken. Every inch of her body screamed for rest. The child's face remained solemn. She crouched in front of Clara, their eyes meeting, identical, though one pair was fresh with youth and the other hollow with exhaustion. You left me once, the child said softly. Don't leave me again. Clara's breath hitched. I didn't want to. I didn't know how. The corridor shuddered faintly. A distant creak echoed, low and deep, like the groan of old wood settling. The sound grew louder, closer. The whiteness dimmed at the edges, shadows bleeding slowly into the walls. The child stood, tugging Clara's hand insistently. If you stop here, they'll find us. Clara wiped her face with a filthy sleeve, forcing her trembling legs to straighten. Where does it go? The child turned back down the endless white path. Her small voice was barely a whisper. Home. The words struck Clara's chest like a blow. The corridor narrowed as they ran, the smooth walls pressing closer until Clara's shoulders brushed both sides. The glow faded with each step, paling to gray, then to a sickly yellow. The child pulled harder, her small hand hot against Clara's clammy palm. Where are we going? Clara panted, her voice frayed. The child didn't answer. She only tugged forward, her bare feet making no sound against the floor. The whispers thickened behind them, no longer faint. They surged like a tide, her own name repeated in countless voices, each layered with anger, longing, hunger. Clara. 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 The corridor groaned, a deep sound from within its bones. Ahead, the walls began to twist. The seamless surface warped into angles that bent wrong, like a hallway drawn by unsteady hands. The floor sloped downward in a spiral, pulling them into a slow descent. Clara stumbled. No, no more stairs, no more down. The child glanced back, her eyes darker than before. You don't get to choose. Not yet. Clara's stomach turned cold. Not yet? The spiral tightened, the walls bending closer until the ceiling nearly grazed her head. The yellow glow flickered, stuttering like a dying bulb, throwing the corridor into momentary darkness with each pulse. In one flicker, Clara caught a glimpse of something. Figures pressed into the walls. Human shapes, their faces straining outward from the smooth surface. Mouths open in silent cries. Their hands reach, frozen, fingertips brushing the air before sinking back. She screamed, yanking her hand free of the child's grip. What is this? The corridor's walls rippled in response, the trapped faces opening their mouths wider until the silence broke. A chorus of shrieks poured out, high and piercing, echoing like shattered glass. Clara clapped her hands over her ears, but the sound lived inside her head. The child turned, her face calm, expressionless now. It's what happens when you stay too long. The whispers crashed against the screams, rising louder, louder, until the walls themselves quaked. The spiral ended abruptly in a flat landing, and there, waiting in the dim light, stood a door. Ordinary. Wooden. Brass knob dull with age. Clara's chest heaved. Not another door. Please. The child tilted her head. For the first time, her mouth curved into a faint smile. Last one. Clara stood trembling before the plain wooden door, its brass knob dulled by time. Compared to the crooked frames and glowing threshold she'd faced, this one looked almost ordinary, almost harmless. Her chest heaved with ragged breaths. No more doors, she whispered. I can't open another one. The corridor was silent now, the screaming faces receded into the walls, their mouths closed. The only sound was Clara's own gasping, and the faint drip of water somewhere unseen. The child beside her tilted her head, that unsettling calm never leaving her small face. It's the last one. Clara's eyes burned. You said that before? The child shook her head slowly. No. This time it's true. Her small hand reached for the knob. Clara jerked forward, grabbing her wrist. Don't touch it. The child's dark eyes met hers. Then you touch it. Clara's stomach turned. She looked back the way they had come. The corridor had vanished, swallowed by a wall of solid shadow. No retreat. No choice. Her body shook as she reached out, fingers grazing the cold brass. Unlike the others, it didn't throb with heat or burn with ice. Just metal. Just a door. Her grandmother's voice whispered faintly, curling through the silence. Good girl. Open it. Tears streaked Clara's cheeks as she turned the knob. The door swung inward with no resistance, revealing a room she knew too well. Her living room. The couch slouched beneath the weight of old cushions. The lamp tilted slightly on its stand. Her coat hung over the back of a chair, just where she'd left it. The storm rattled faintly at the windows, but outside was her street. Her neighbor's porch light glowed across the way. Clara's knees buckled. Home. She breathed. She stumbled forward, her heart aching with desperate hope. She could leave the house. She could be free. But as her feet crossed the threshold, she froze. The photographs on the wall were wrong. Each frame showed her. Not her friends. Not her family. Only her. Dozens of Claras, at every age, every angle. Smiling, crying, screaming. The child stepped in behind her, voice flat. You never left. The door slammed shut. Stay. 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 The child stepped closer, her hand reaching for Clara's. You can't leave, because there's nowhere else to go. The room trembled. The walls stretched, bending inward, as if the entire house were leaning down to smother her. And Clara realized the truth. The house wasn't keeping her prisoner. The house was her. Clara spun toward the door, slamming her fists against the wood. No! Let me out! The knob refused to turn, locked tight. The brass seared her palm when she tried, forcing her to release it with a cry. The room looked so much like her living room. The sagging couch, the coffee table stacked with magazines, the faint smell of dust and old fabric. But the wrongness seeped through in waves. Every photograph on the walls showed her. Not just one version, but all of them. A toddler with sticky hands, a teenager scowling at the camera, an older woman lined with age she hadn't lived yet. All of them Clara. Their eyes followed her. Their mouths twitched faintly, as though pressing against the glass from the other side. Her throat closed. This isn't real. The child stood in the middle of the room, her small body rigid, her voice calm. It's as real as you let it be. Clara staggered backward until her legs hit the couch. She dropped onto it, trembling, her chest heaving. The cushions sank beneath her, warm, too warm, like flesh. She jerked upright with a sob. The photographs on the walls began to whisper, their mouths moving in unison. Stay here. You'll be safe here. Sit down. Rest. Her head shook violently. No. No, I won't. The television flickered on by itself, static hissing across the screen. Slowly, the picture sharpened into an image, Clara, sitting right there on the couch, staring back at herself with hollow eyes. Her own voice spilled from the speakers, weary, resigned. It's easier if you stop fighting. The child turned to her, expression blank. She's right. This is the last room. This is where you stay. Clara's tears fell hot and fast. I don't belong here. I don't belong to you. The television Clara smiled faintly. You've always belonged to us. Every version of you. Every shadow. Every breath. The photograph shuddered, glass cracking as the faces inside pressed harder against the frames. The whispers rose into a furious chorus. The child stood calmly at the center of it all, her eyes black now, her smile thin. See? You were never outside the house. You are the house. Every locked door, every scream in the dark, they were you, waiting for yourself. The swarm lifted Clara higher, pressing her toward the ceiling as it cracked open with golden light. And for the first time, Clara felt something inside her break, not her body, but her belief that she had ever been free. The walls bowed closer, breathing with her every gasp. The ceiling dipped, the floor swelled beneath her feet. Each pulse of the house's frame echoed inside her chest, like two hearts beating in sync. Clara pressed her palms against her skull. No, that's not true. I'm not you. The photographs shuddered, their cracked glass splintering wider. Each Clara inside mouthed the same words in perfect rhythm. You are us. We are you. The television hissed louder. Her image on the screen leaned forward, her hollow-eyed double staring straight into her. When you walked through that first door, when you heard us whisper your name, you stopped being just one Clara. We opened you up. We showed you everything you were, everything you could be. Clara staggered, her back hitting the wall. It pulsed warmly, sticking to her shirt, pulling her into its rhythm. I didn't choose this, she screamed. The child's small hand slid into hers, firm and steady. Her voice was soft, almost tender. You didn't have to choose. You were born inside us. Clara shook her head violently, tears flying from her cheeks. I was born in the world. I had a family, a life, memories, the child interrupted. Reflections. Shadows the house let you play with. The words hit her like ice water, stealing her breath. No, she whispered. No, that's not. The floorboards split beneath her, glowing veins crawling outward. The golden light bled through, flooding the false living room until it dripped down the walls like liquid fire. The photographs screamed, their faces pressing outward, glass exploding as dozens of Claras clawed free, tumbling into the room. They surrounded her. Versions young and old, broken and strong, all of them her. Their mouths moved in jagged unison, a single voice swelling until the house itself shook. Stop pretending you are alone. Clara fell to her knees, clutching her head, sobbing. The swarm of selves closed in, their hands reaching, pulling her upward. The swarm of Claras pressed in from every side, their fingers clutching her arms, her legs, her hair. Their faces brushed against hers, too close, her own eyes staring back, wide and black, mouths splitting in smiles too sharp. Clara screamed, thrashing, but they lifted her easily, carrying her upward toward the ceiling that pulsed with golden cracks. Her body felt weightless, her will dissolving under the pressure of so many voices inside her head. No more running. No more doors. No more you. Only us. The child walked beneath them, calm and steady, her bare feet leaving blackened prints on the floorboards. Her voice threaded through the cacophony, soft but undeniable. It doesn't hurt if you stop fighting. Clara clawed at the hands dragging her upward, sobbing, I don't want to be you. I don't want to be part of this. The swarm laughed, a sound that echoed in every pitch of her own voice. You already are. You always were. The ceiling split wide with a violent crack. Blinding golden light poured through, searing her eyes. The swarm pressed her against it, and for a moment she felt herself dissolving, her edges blurring into the glow. Their screams became her screams, their breath her breath. Her memories shattered into fragments, childhood summers, stormy nights, her grandmother's stern voice, the rocking chair, the lantern in the woods. Each piece scattered into the light, indistinguishable from the rest. No, Clara whimpered. Please, no. 100 mouths answered as one. Yes. The ceiling burst open, swallowing her whole. For an instant, Clara's body was gone. Only light. Only voices. Only the rhythm of the house's breathing, its heartbeat pulsing through her veins. She felt the walls stretch. She felt the doors slam. She felt the whisper of wind through broken windows. The house was her now. And she was the house. At last, the voices quieted into one. Welcome home. Welcome. Silence reigned. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside drenched and still. The moon glowed faintly behind a veil of clouds, silvering the wet grass that stretched across the yard. Blackthorn Road was quiet, save for the groan of old trees shifting in the night air, and then, headlights. A small car pulled into the driveway, its engine rattling as it idled. The driver leaned forward, squinting through the windshield at the hulking silhouette of the house. Its windows gleamed faintly in the moonlight, watchful. The car door creaked open. A young man stepped out, clutching a folder of papers under one arm. He wore a weary expression, his shoulders hunched against the lingering chill. He paused at the bottom of the porch steps, frowning up at the towering house. This has to be the place, he muttered, glancing down at the papers. Blackthorn. Inherited property. Probate inspection. The folder bore the crest of a law office. His shoes squelched in the damp grass as he mounted the steps, the boards creaking beneath his weight. The front door loomed, its brass knob glinting faintly in the moonlight. He reached for it. Inside, the house stirred. The air shifted in the parlor. The couch exhaled faint dust. The photographs on the wall straightened themselves with faint clicks, their glass panes trembling. A light flickered faintly at the top of the staircase. Golden and warm, and in the silence, a whisper, not many voices now. Just one. Clear. Steady, come in. The man hesitated, glancing over his shoulder at the car, at the empty road beyond. Then he chuckled nervously, shaking his head. Don't spook yourself, Aaron. Just an empty house. 5 minutes of notes, and you're out. He turned the knob. The door creaked open, and somewhere deep within the walls, Clara smiled. Aaron pushed the door open, the hinges shrieking faintly as the stale air of the house poured out. It smelled of dust, damp wood, and something faintly metallic, like rusting pipes. He wrinkled his nose. God, it stinks in here, he muttered, stepping inside. He flicked on the small flashlight he brought, sweeping its beam across the entryway. The grand staircase stretched up before him, crooked and imposing. Faded wallpaper sagged in strips, and family portraits lined the walls. He squinted at them. Oddly, each frame seemed cracked, as though the glass had buckled under some unseen pressure. Aaron jotted a note in his folder. Extensive interior decay. likely unstable. His footsteps echoed as he moved further inside. The floorboards groaned under his weight. He paused, frowning. "Hello?" Silence answered. Still, the air felt wrong, heavier than it should, as if the house were listening. He shook himself. "You're just tired," he whispered. "Couple photos, a quick report, and you're out." He lifted his phone, snapping pictures of the staircase, the parlor beyond. Each flash briefly illuminated the room in stark white, and each time, something shifted. In the first photo, the couch sat slouched and dusty. In the second, it seemed to have straightened, cushions fluffed, as if waiting for someone. In the third, a teacup gleamed faintly on the coffee table, though he hadn't seen it placed there. Aaron frowned, scrolling through the photos. "That's weird." The air shifted behind him. A floorboard groaned, though he hadn't moved. "A draft," he said quickly, too loudly. "Just a draft." But then he heard it. A whisper. Faint at first, almost like a breath against his ear. "Aaron." He froze. "Who's there?" The whisper came again, clearer now, curling from the walls. "Welcome home." Aaron's flashlight trembled in his hand. He swung the beam across the room, and froze when it caught on one of the photographs. The face inside wasn't a stranger's. It was his. Aaron's mouth went dry. The photograph on the wall showed him sitting at his desk in the law office, papers stacked high, tie loosened at his throat. He knew that picture. It had been taken by a colleague just last week. But he hadn't printed it, hadn't given it to anyone. His flashlight beam shook. "That's not possible." The air thickened, pressing against his chest. Another floorboard groaned. The teacup on the coffee table rattled faintly, though the room was still, and then the whispers rose again. "Aaron. Aaron. Welcome." They layered over one another, hundreds of voices, dry and hollow. His pulse thundered. He turned in a frantic circle, the beam slicing across sagging wallpaper. Warped frames, empty corners. But one voice cut through the rest. Softer. Clearer. A woman's. "Don't run, Aaron." He spun, his light catching on the staircase. For just an instant he saw her standing there, a figure halfway up, pale, her hair hanging in damp strands. Eyes wide. A mouth trembling as though it had forgotten how to smile. "Clara." Aaron staggered back, nearly tripping over the edge of the rug. "Jesus Christ, who are you?" The figure didn't answer. She only tilted her head, her voice curling into the air again. "I was like you. Once." The photographs rattled on the walls. Several cracked wider, their glass spiderwebbing. Faces pressed outward against the panes, not just Aaron's, but Clara's too, repeated dozens of times, all screaming silently. Aaron's throat closed. He bolted for the door, slamming his shoulder against it. The knob refused to turn. The wood pulsed faintly beneath his palms, warm and alive. The whispers surged louder, filling his skull. "Stay. Stay. Stay." He pounded on the door until his fist stung, panic clawing his chest. Behind him, the sound of footsteps on the stairs grew louder. Slow. Deliberate. Clara's whisper threaded through them, soft as breath. "It's easier if you stop fighting." Aaron froze, every hair on his body standing on end. He didn't know why, but the certainty struck him like ice. The house wasn't empty, and Clara hadn't left. Aaron pressed his back against the door, his chest heaving. His flashlight beam trembled across the parlor, catching dust motes that swirled as though stirred by unseen hands. The footsteps on the stairs halted midway, the silence heavier than the air. Then, a whisper close, as though she were standing right beside him. "Aaron. Listen to me." He whipped the light sideways, the beam slicing across empty air. "Who are you?" His voice cracked. "Where are you?" The reply came from everywhere at once, yet somehow it carried a thread of urgency, different from the others. "My name is Clara. I was like you. I thought I could leave." Aaron's grip on the flashlight tightened until his knuckles whitened. "What does that mean?" The walls shuddered, a low groan running through the floorboards. The photographs rattled harder, some slipping from their hooks and shattering on the ground. Each broken pane released faint whispers that crawled into the air, merging with the chorus. Clara's voice cut through again, sharp, desperate. Don't trust what you see. It isn't a house, it's alive. And once it knows you, you can't walk away. Aaron's heart hammered. He turned in frantic circles, searching for her. If you're real, if you're here, then show yourself. A pause. Then, at the top of the staircase, his beam caught her again. Clara stood in the glow of a flickering light, her eyes hollow but fixed on him, her skin pale as candle wax. She raised a hand, beckoning slowly. Aaron's stomach twisted. His instincts screamed to run, but the door behind him stayed stubborn, pulsing faintly beneath his palm. Why me? He whispered. Her voice carried softly down the stairs. Because you came. And that's all it takes. The chorus swelled suddenly, furious, overlapping until the sound was deafening. Don't listen. Don't trust. Stay. Stay. Clara staggered, clutching her head as though fighting against something unseen. She screamed, her voice ragged. Aaron, if you want any chance, don't go upstairs. The light above her sputtered out, and she was gone. Aaron's flashlight beam shook in his hand, darting across the staircase where Clara had stood only moments before. The space was empty now, nothing but sagging carpet and warped wood disappearing into shadow. His throat tightened. No, no, she was there. She was there. The house groaned in answer, the sound deep and wet, like old timbers bowing under pressure. The photographs along the entryway wall began to hum faintly, their glass vibrating. Some faces, his own, pressed outward, lips moving in soundless whispers. Aaron spun back toward the front door. He rattled the knob, pounded against the frame with his shoulder, even kicked at it. The door didn't budge. It pulsed faintly under each blow, almost amused. "Goddamn it, let me out!" His voice cracked into a ragged shout. The whispers rose behind him, snaking down from the second floor, curling through the banister's carved wood. Upstairs. Upstairs. Come see. Aaron froze. Clara's last words echoed in his skull, her voice sharp with warning. Don't go upstairs. His breath came shallow and fast. He backed away from the staircase, retreating into the parlor. Dust swirled faintly in the beam of his flashlight. The couch sagged in the gloom, cushions slouched, as though someone had just risen from them. He hesitated. The stairs loomed behind him, heavy with silence, waiting. But every step he took into the parlor felt no safer. The air pressed heavier here, thick with the scent of lavender gone sour. A faint creak sounded from the second floor. Slow. Measured. Footsteps. Aaron swallowed hard, his knuckles whitening around the flashlight. His choices narrowed in his mind: stay near the door that refused to open, or turn toward the parlor that seemed to breathe with him, or face the stairs where Clara had warned him not to go. The whispers surged again, overlapping, impatient. Choose. 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 And from somewhere above, Clara's voice returned, faint, strained, but clear. Don't come up here, Aaron. Please. The next step groaned, louder this time, as if something heavy was descending toward him anyway. Aaron's heart slammed against his ribs as the steps overhead groaned again, slow and deliberate, as though something was taking its time descending. Clara's voice echoed faintly from above, desperate, ragged. Don't come up here, Aaron. Please. His breath caught in his throat. She had sounded real, not like the chorus of whispers or the distorted echoes that seeped from the walls. He wanted to believe her, but every fiber of him screamed that if he stood frozen at the foot of the stairs, he would see what was coming down them. And he didn't want to see. Aaron spun and bolted into the parlor. His flashlight beam cut across the room, illuminating the sagging couch, the crooked coffee table, the broken teacup on the floor. The smell hit him harder here, lavender, rotted sweet, undercut by iron. The whispers slithered closer, wrapping around his ears. Good. Sit. Rest. The cushions on the couch shifted faintly, sighing as though someone invisible had just leaned back into them. Aaron raised his flashlight like a weapon. Stay the hell away from me. The photographs on the parlor wall shuddered. He swung the light toward them, and his stomach turned cold. The frames now held not just his face, but Clara's. Dozens of her, crying, screaming, whispering, blank-eyed. Their mouths moved in jagged unison. Don't fight. You're already here. The couch groaned louder, pressing upward, its cushions swelling until the seams split. From within, a pale hand burst free, clawing toward the air. Another followed. Then a face, Aaron's own face, twisted into a wide, empty grin. Aaron stumbled backward, the beams shaking violently. No, that's not me! The figure dragged itself fully from the couch, its body unfolding too long, its movements jerking. It smiled with his mouth and spoke in his voice. It's easier if you stop. Aaron's stomach heaved as the thing crawled free of the couch, its limbs jerking like a puppet on tangled strings. Its skin hung loose in some places, stretched too tight in others. Yet the face was unmistakable, his own. It stood fully now, towering just slightly taller than Aaron, its shoulders crooked. The grin split its face too wide, teeth shining with a faint golden glimmer. Aaron raised his flashlight like a club. Stay back, he warned, his voice cracking. The doppelganger tilted its head, the motion too sharp, vertebrae cracking as it turned. It stepped forward, bare feet squelching against the rug as though soaked in mud. Its voice came in Aaron's exact tone, though layered with others beneath. Why fight? You walked in. You signed the papers. You belong to us now. Aaron's chest heaved. You're not me. The grin widened. Not yet. The photographs rattled on the walls, frames falling one by one, glass shattering across the floor. Each broken pane spilled whispers into the room, Clara's voice among them now, thin and mournful. Aaron, don't let it take you. His heart lurched. He swung the flashlight with a panicked cry. It connected with the thing's shoulder, cracking against bone, but the creature didn't flinch. Its grin remained unshaken, its eyes hollow voids that swallowed the beam's light. It lunged. Aaron threw himself sideways, crashing into the coffee table. The wood split beneath his weight, magazines scattering across the floor. The doppelganger loomed above him, crouching low, its hands stretching into claws. Get away from me! Aaron roared, hurling the broken flashlight. It struck the creature's chest, bouncing off uselessly. The thing leaned closer, its face inches from his. Aaron stared into his own grin, his own eyes staring back at him, and he realized the truth. The house wasn't showing him a monster. It was showing him what he would become. Aaron's pulse thundered as the thing leaned closer, its breath hot and reeking of rot. Its grin stretched impossibly wide, splitting the corners of its mouth until black fluid dripped down its chin. Aaron gagged, shoving against its chest with all his strength. The creature's skin felt wrong, soft and pliant in places, like wet clay, but beneath it pulsed something hard and rhythmic, like a second heartbeat. Stop! It hissed in his voice, though deeper, layered. We're the same. Don't fight yourself. Aaron's muscles strained, his arms shaking violently. I'm not you! He roared, twisting violently to the side. The thing's weight crashed down where he had been, its clawed hands gouging deep furrows in the splintered coffee table. Seizing the moment, Aaron scrambled across the rug, shards of glass cutting into his palms. He grabbed a jagged piece of the broken frame and whipped around, slashing it across the doppelganger's arm. The thing howled, not in pain, but in laughter. Black smoke hissed from the wound, curling into the air like steam. From the walls, Clara's voice rose above the chorus, strained but urgent. Aaron, don't let it touch you! If it touches you! Her words were drowned as the whispers surged louder, furious. Don't listen! Don't listen! He is us! He is ours! The doppelganger lunged again, faster this time. Aaron ducked low, the claws tearing through the wallpaper, raking across wood that shuddered as if alive. He shoved the shard of glass upward with blind desperation, driving it into the creature's throat. For an instant, its grin faltered. The golden glow within its mouth dimmed. The swarm of whispers stuttered, uncertain. Aaron shoved harder. The glass cracked, splintering in his hand, but the wound tore wider. Black ichor spilled out, sizzling as it struck the rug. The doppelganger staggered back, clutching at its throat. It still smiled, but the edges trembled now, fragile. Aaron's chest heaved as he crawled to his feet. "I'm not you!" he spat, his voice shaking with rage. The thing tilted its head one last time, and in his own voice whispered, "Yet." Then it collapsed into the couch, melting into the cushions like wet ash until nothing remained but the stench of rot. Aaron stumbled backward, shaking. His cut palms bled freely, his ankle ached, but he was still standing. And from the staircase above, Clara's whisper returned, softer now, but clear. "You heard it. That means you can still fight." Aaron staggered out of the parlor, his breathing ragged, blood slicking his hands. Every nerve screamed for him to find a way out, but the front door loomed just as it had before, shut tight, its brass knob faintly pulsing. He didn't even try this time. Clara's whisper curled down from above, barely louder than the house's groaning bones. "Don't stay still. It wants you to freeze. Keep moving." Aaron gritted his teeth. "Where? Where do I go?" The house answered for her. The hallway stretched unnaturally, its wallpaper peeling back in strips to reveal bare, wet wood. The floorboards rippled beneath his feet as though something massive moved below. Doors appeared where he knew none had been before, narrow, crooked, each glowing faintly with sickly colors, green, red, blue, black. He froze, heart pounding. "No," he muttered. "I saw what happened to her. I'm not opening those." The whispers hissed at once, sharp and urgent. "Open! Open! Open!" Every door rattled violently, the knobs twisting, wood groaning. One burst open on its own, spilling a wave of golden light across the hall. The air reeked of iron and smoke. Aaron staggered back, shielding his eyes. "No!" The glow pulsed stronger, chains rattling faintly from the unseen depths. His stomach turned. He remembered Clara's scream, her warning not to go down. Clara's voice pressed through the chaos, firmer this time. "Not that one. Left. The dark one." Aaron turned. At the far end of the hall stood a door that gave off no glow at all. Black wood, brass knob dulled nearly gray. Unlike the others, it didn't rattle or scream. It simply waited. The whispers surged, furious. "Don't! Don't! Don't!" Aaron's throat tightened. He stumbled toward it anyway, one bloody hand dragging along the wall for balance. The floor shuddered with each step, the house protesting, trying to throw him off. He reached the door. His palm hovered over the knob. Clara's whisper was right at his ear now. "This is the only way." The knob was ice cold. He turned it. The door creaked open without resistance, swinging inward on silent hinges. No glow spilled out, no whisper of air, only a thick darkness that swallowed Aaron's flashlight beam as soon as it entered. His skin crawled. "Clara, what's in here?" Her voice answered, faint, trembling but steady. "The place the house doesn't want you to see." Aaron hesitated on the threshold, the wood beneath his feet vibrating with a slow, angry pulse. The other doors along the corridor slammed violently, one after another, as though the house were trying to drown Clara out. "Don't! Don't! Don't!" Aaron clenched his jaw. "If you don't want me to go in, then I'm going in." He stepped forward. The darkness enveloped him instantly, thick and suffocating, like walking into oil. His flashlight flickered, sputtered, then died completely. He froze, his breath shallow, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. The door behind him slammed shut. He was blind. "Aaron!" Clara's whisper came, nearer now, almost inside his head. "You'll feel like you're falling. Don't fight it. Let it take you." "What?" His voice cracked. "No, no, I'm not." The floor vanished beneath his feet. He plummeted, his stomach lurching, wind roaring past his ears. He screamed, arms flailing in the endless dark, until suddenly the ground caught him, not with a crash, but like water, soft and suffocating. He sank, weightless, until his feet touched solid ground again. The dark peeled back, dimmed shapes emerging. He stood in a vast cavern, but unlike the golden chamber Clara had described, this one was gray and cold, lit by a faint, sourceless light. The walls weren't alive here, no pulsing veins, no whispers. Just silence. Aaron turned in a slow circle, breath clouding faintly in the chill. Clara? A figure stood at the far end of the cavern. She stepped forward barefoot, her hair damp, her eyes hollow yet fixed on him. Clara. You made it, she whispered. Aaron's chest tightened as Clara moved closer, her bare feet silent against the stone floor. She looked fragile, her skin pale and bruised as though the house had wrung her dry. Yet there was strength in her eyes, hollow, yes, but still burning faintly. He raised a shaking hand. You're real. You're actually real. Clara's lips curved into the ghost of a smile. As real as you. For now. He swallowed hard, stepping closer. What is this place? Why me? Why any of us? She hesitated, glancing toward the cavern walls. Even here, where the whispers were absent, she looked wary, as though the house could still hear. The house isn't just a place, she whispered. It's hungry. It pulls people in, makes them part of itself. Every scream you've heard, every face you've seen, they were swallowed. Versions of us trapped forever. Aaron shook his head violently. No, that's impossible. Houses don't eat people. Clara's laugh was hollow, joyless. That's what I thought. Until it was too late. Her expression hardened. It doesn't need blood, Aaron. It feeds on choices. Every door you open, every step you take, every refusal, it uses them to pull you deeper, to make you part of its walls. Aaron's stomach turned. Then why am I here? I didn't choose this. I came to file papers, for God's sake. Clara stepped closer, her eyes fixed on his. That was the choice it needed. You came. That's enough. The rest is just waiting for you to stop fighting. Aaron's fists clenched. His voice broke. And you? Why haven't you stopped? She looked down, her shoulders trembling. Because if I stop, there won't be anyone left to fight it. And if there's even one more chance to stop it, to burn it out, someone has to try. Aaron blinked, stunned. You mean, we can destroy it? Her eyes lifted again, dark and determined. Maybe. But not from outside. Only from its heart. The cavern floor shuddered faintly, dust sifting down from the ceiling. The whispers returned, faint at first, then stronger. They're talking. They're planning. Stop them. Clara's hand seized Aaron's. Her grip was cold but firm. We don't have long, she said. If you want to live, if you want to end this, you'll have to help me. Clara's grip tightened, tugging Aaron toward a narrow fissure at the far end of the cavern. The crack split the stone floor and walls, jagged and uneven, pulsing faintly with a dull white glow that seemed to bleed through from some deeper chamber. Aaron dug his heels in. Wait, where does that go? Her face was grim. To the part it doesn't want us to see. The true core. The hunger. The whispers surged, flooding the cavern, furious. Don't. The walls trembled violently, and fissures spidered outward beneath their feet. Aaron staggered, catching himself against the damp stone. It knows we're here. Clara's hollow eyes locked onto his. Then we hurry. She pulled him into the fissure. The crack was narrow, the rocks scraping Aaron's shoulders as they squeezed through. The white glow grew stronger, casting their shadows long and warped. The air was cold, sharp, like breathing in frost. Aaron's chest heaved. His voice trembled. You've been down here before, haven't you? Clara nodded once. It's where I first understood what it wanted. They emerged into a narrow passage, the floor slick with condensation. The stone walls here weren't smooth, they bulged with embedded shapes. Aaron froze, his flashlight beam trembling as it skimmed the surface. Faces. Hundreds of faces pressed into the rock, their features half-formed, mouths stretched wide in silent screams. Their eyes rolled weakly, tracking the two intruders. Aaron gagged, bow rising. Jesus Christ. Clara's expression didn't change. Every one of them thought they'd get out. The whisper slithered down the corridor, softer now, taunting. You'll join them. You'll feed us. Just walk a little farther. Aaron clenched his jaw, trying to shut them out. What happens if we reach the core? Clara hesitated. We burn it. Aaron turned sharply to her. With what? We don't have anything. She raised her other hand, and for the first time, Aaron noticed what she carried, a shard of glass, glowing faintly white. It pulsed in rhythm with the fisher's light. The house made this, she whispered, when I broke one of its jars. It hates it. That means it can hurt it. The floor shuddered, and a low roar rolled through the stone. The faces embedded in the walls began to writhe, their mouths opening wider. Clara's grip on Aaron's hand tightened painfully. It knows. Run! The roar swelled until the stone itself seemed to vibrate, dust and fragments raining from the ceiling. The embedded faces along the corridor writhed, their eyes rolling wildly, mouths splitting wider with shrieks that pierced Aaron's skull. He stumbled, clutching his ears. God, make it stop! Clara yanked his arm, dragging him forward. Don't listen. They're only bait. But the faces weren't content to scream. Their jaws unhinged further, cracking the stone around them. Long black tongues snaked outward, slick and grasping, lashing at Aaron's legs. One wrapped around his ankle, cold and wet, yanking him off his feet. He crashed hard to the floor, breath bursting from his lungs. The tongue dragged him toward the wall, toward the gaping maw of a face that widened into a void of teeth. Aaron! Clara dropped beside him, slashing with her glowing shard. The blade sliced clean through the tongue, spraying black ichor that hissed where it struck the stone. The severed piece writhed on the floor before dissolving into smoke. Aaron scrambled up, his chest heaving. They're alive! They are the house, Clara cut him off, her voice fierce. And they'll drown us in themselves if we don't move. They ran. The corridor narrowed, the walls pressing closer, faces straining further into the passage. Dozens of tongues lashed at them, some slick with mucus. Others barked. One grazed Aaron's cheek, leaving a burning welt. Clara slashed furiously, her shard glowing brighter with each strike. Every cut sent ripples of fury through the corridor, the faces screaming in unison, the stone trembling harder. Aaron stumbled forward, ducking low as another mouth snapped at his head, teeth clamping shut inches from his ear. His flashlight slipped from his grasp, clattering away into the dark. Now there was only the shard's white glow to guide them. The passage bent sharply, the fissure widening into a chamber ahead. The light pouring from it was stronger, almost blinding, but the way was blocked. A mass of faces had melted together into a single wall of flesh and stone, their mouths fused into one enormous opening that yawned across the entire corridor. From within it, the whispers thundered, "You cannot pass. You are already ours." Clara raised the shard, her hand trembling but steady. Then we cut our way through. A chamber glowed ahead, vaster than any they had seen. Its heart pulsed with golden veins, chains rattling faintly from the ceiling. The core. Clara yanked the shard free, her chest heaving, her face streaked with ichor and light. She turned to Aaron, her eyes burning. This is it. If we fail here, we're gone forever. The fused mass writhed, an obscene barricade of faces pressed together, skins stretched taut and cracked. Dozens of eyes blinked in chaotic rhythm, some weeping black tears, others staring glassily into nothing. The mouths had melted into one colossal maw, its jagged teeth protruding like splintered stone. Every exhale from it reeked of rot and iron. Aaron gagged, bow rising in his throat. Jesus Christ. How the hell do we fight that? Clara didn't answer. Her face was pale but determined, her hand steady as she lifted the glowing shard. The white light flared, spilling across the fused monstrosity. The mouths shrieked at once, the sound high and piercing, like steam whistles tearing his eardrums. Aaron stumbled, clutching his head. It hates the light. Clara nodded once. Good. Then we use it. The mass convulsed, tongues lashing from the cracks between faces, thick ropes of muscle slick with mucus. One snapped around Aaron's wrist, burning cold. He screamed, yanking back. But the pull was relentless, dragging him toward the enormous maw. Clara slashed the tongue free with a savage strike, black ichor spraying her face. She didn't flinch. "Stay behind me." The shard pulsed brighter as she pressed forward, carving into the wall of mouths. Wherever it touched, flesh hissed and melted away, leaving jagged holes that bled light instead of blood. The mass shrieked louder. The corridor trembling with fury, Aaron staggered forward, shielding his face from the spray of ichor. "It's working!" The fused faces screamed words now, their voices layered into one terrible chorus. "Stop! Stop! You will never leave! You are ours!" Clara roared in defiance, plunging the shard deep into the wall's center. The glow flared so violently Aaron had to shield his eyes. The mouths wailed, their teeth cracking, their eyes bursting into smoke. The wall split open with a thunderous crack, tearing wide enough for them to see beyond. The chamber swallowed them whole. It was vast, cathedral-like, its ceiling lost in shadow. Every wall was alive with veins of molten gold, pulsing in rhythm like a colossal heart. The air was hot, damp, and metallic, thick enough to choke. Chains dangled from above, swaying slowly, their clinks echoing like distant bells. At the center rose a grotesque structure, equal parts house and body. Its crooked roof twisted like broken ribs, its windows gaped like hollow eyes, and its front door swelled with every breath it took, as though the building itself inhaled and exhaled. Aaron staggered to a halt, his chest heaving. "My God!" Clara gripped the shard tighter, its glow burning brighter in this place. "This is the heart. This is what keeps it alive." The house groaned in reply, the sound reverberating through their bones. The golden veins bulged, spilling light that painted their skin. The whispers thundered now, no longer fragmented but a single voice, endless, vast, and heavy. "You are already US." The chains lashed down without warning, striking the floor inches from Aaron's feet. He stumbled back with a cry as sparks sprayed. Another snapped toward Clara, but she dodged, rolling to her knees, the shard still clutched in her hand. She shouted over the roar, "We have to drive it into the heart. Into the core." Aaron's eyes widened. "That thing?" He pointed at the swollen doorway, which pulsed as if waiting, lips of warped wood splitting wider into a jagged maw. "Yes," Clara screamed. "If we pierce it, maybe we can end it." The floor buckled beneath them, boards splintering into grasping hands that clawed at their ankles. Aaron kicked free, panic exploding in his chest. "We're going to die." Clara's hollow eyes locked onto his, fierce and unyielding. "Then we die fighting." The house roared, chains whipping violently, veins bursting golden light that poured across the floor like lava. Faces pressed against the walls, shrieking in rage. 1,000 Claras and now Aaron too, his own face, already trapped, already screaming. Clara raised the shard high, the glow blinding. Together, Aaron's fist closed around hers, steadying the blade. Their arms shook as they braced against the storm, the maw of the heart opening wider, drooling molten light. The voices screamed, the chamber quaked, but still they surged forward, and with one final cry, they drove the shard into the pulsing core. The light exploded,